Thank you. Good evening and welcome to tonight's Board of Selectmen's meeting for June 25th, 2013. On the agenda tonight for 6:30 p.m., Attorney John Davis, Attorney Richard Gettleman, discussion the indemnification agreement. 7 p.m. will be citizens' input. 7:05, Chairman's update. 7:10, Tara Sagor, sexual abuse report policy. 7:40 p.m., there'll be a public hearing for restraint or disposal of a Springer Spaniel from the town of Foxborough, owner Peter and Marianne Prenos of 10 Elger Road. 8:05, public hearing, Police Chief O'Leary, Board of Selectmen proposed revisions to commercial parking regulations. 8:20, Mildred Green, Elizabeth Travers, request to be on the Council of Aging Board. 8:40, Jeffrey Lovely, Esquire, approval of easement for the Boyden Library. And 8:50, executive session to conduct strategy in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining session or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Deputy Chief John Chandler, Town Manager Kevin Pecos, and collective bargaining for public employees for the PEC. And obviously before that, we will have action items. So James, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pleasure. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, James. Okay. Right. Running a few minutes behind. Attorney John Davis and Richard Gettleman, please come forward.
Good evening.
Pass that to Jimmy, please.
The one about the insurance.
Thank you.
Mark, maybe for the benefit of everybody, if I could sort of start with this issue at the beginning, with some background, and then go forward with it.
Right.
Okay. So, as of July 1st this year, the town's insurance coverage with Maya expires. Kevin has negotiated a renewal of the Maya policy. And the issue that we're here tonight about is the law enforcement part of that policy. For all years up until the present, the town has provided insurance for events at the stadium by having the craft organization provide a general liability policy on which the town is a named insured. And that general liability policy protects the town for damages or harm caused by acts of the stadium. It does not cover the town for damages caused by the town's own personnel, including our police force. That liability exposure is covered by the Maya policy. And so when we had the case that just came up, and there's exceptions to this, but that's generally when the case just came up, although Great Divide that insures the craft organization and the town had obligations to the town under the general liability policy, they took the position, Great Divide took the position, that because the harm was caused allegedly by the Towns Act and not by the craft organization, the policy under which they provide coverage to the town didn't apply. We dispute that, but and with that having occurred, Maya said, okay, we have coverage for you and we will protect the town. Maya is in dispute with Great Divide. We're in dispute with the craft organization over whether or not the existing policy on the Great Divide is applicable to these events or not. That's sort of a background to the insurance issue. Because of those concerns, your board asked us to take a look at both the indemnification provisions and insurance provisions so that they would be in place, and there wouldn't be any problems as of July 1. 6-8 weeks ago, we resolved, I worked with John, the board approved the form of an indemnification agreement, the craft organization. We negotiate with them, so that part is settled. The insurance part was also resolved, at least in principle, and what we were going to do was the following. The craft organization was going to look for a law enforcement policy that would directly cover the town for damage or harm caused by our actors, by our police, by whoever it was that works for the town. That policy would be in effect and cover us for those events. The problem occurred that because the craft organization is not a government, it's not a law enforcement entity, they couldn't buy a policy in their name and have us as an additional insured. So what they were going to do instead was to buy a policy where the town would be the principal insured. It would be actually our policy, they'd pay for it. We'd be the principal insured, they'd be the additional insured. That was fine. This all happened 6 to 8 weeks ago. And what they were going to do was to go out and get 3 quotes, bring them back, we'd work out, the board, town manager, pick the best one, and we'd put that in place. That policy would cover law enforcement, not just at the stadium, but townwide. It would be townwide and at the stadium. And in principle, we were going to attribute the cost of that policy between the cost, because there's the craft organization enterprise, and what we would pay generally if there were no stadium. Fair enough concept. We ran into time difficulties because in order for the craft organization to seek to purchase the policy like that, they needed what's called a broker of record authorization from Foxborough. The initial broker of record letter, Kevin told us, was of concern because it would have appeared as though we were leaving Maya and going with a new entity, a new insurance company, and didn't want to do that. It's a problem easily enough solved. We will do a broker of record letter specifically limited to seeking a law enforcement policy under these particular circumstances. I don't think that's a problem. I've talked to Jim Cobry a number of times in the last day or two, and I told him to get me exactly the form of letter that limits it, says I think that's all going to happen. So the craft organization has been ready and willing to do all of this for several weeks now, and they remain so. So that's where we are. Now, in the interim, Maya will provide coverage to the town. It's not a case where you're not going to have coverage as of July 1. The problem is that whereas in the past, and the premiums have not gone up, what has gone up is the deductible. In the past, the town has been exposed to a deductible of $7,500 per plaintiff. There's a dispute that we don't have to solve now as to whether a class action is 1,000 plaintiffs or 1 plaintiff. We don't think so, they do think so, but we don't have to solve that because it hasn't been alleged yet. The problem is that the deductible now is $50,000, and that by itself is a lot of money. That's where we are today. We can go forward July 1, accept the $50,000 deductible, and get this thing resolved. But what I've done, and it's been admittedly difficult to act because of Kevin's illness now and because of the transition that's happening, but I have set up a conference call tomorrow at noon on the assumption that Bob is going to be acting town manager. That assumption, I can work with anybody, but I'm assuming it's going to be Bob. And so I spoke earlier today with Meyer. I spoke to their, not on their executive level, but someone who had sent us the notice to what she needs to put the policy in effect. She needs a copy of the indemnification agreement. I have that. She needs a copy of the Great Divide policy naming us. I've got that. So I'll get all those to her tomorrow, but I wanted to talk to their management persons with either Kevin, if it was going to be Kevin or the town manager, with the hopes of trying to persuade them that the $50,000 deductible, at least until the next concert, which is July 20, that's the Bon Jovi concert, at least until then, all that's going to happen is the stadium is a couple of soccer events. They've never been a problem. The soccer events, what we have in place today, I'd like to ask them to keep that in place until at least the Bon Jovi concert. His historical experience would argue for that. Nothing is really different other than, Maya woke up and saw the exposure, and now they want to, instead of raising the premium, they want a large deductible. I would argue with them that it's not necessary. Not receptive at the level I spoke to today to that suggestion, but I kept pressing to talk to someone at a higher level. I didn't have the benefit of a town manager on my side, but that's where we are. So it's a solvable problem. I've thought all along it's a solvable. I see no reason why it isn't. Our problem right now is timing. The timing being July 1 comes and goes, and unless Maya takes a different position, you've got a $50,000 deductible. And if there is an event that for which the town is responsible, keep that in mind. If there's an event for which the stadium is responsible, none of this matters, because in that case, Great Divide policy kicks in. But if there's an event, before we get this insurance changed, for which Maya would be responsible, we would be facing a deductible of $50,000, and that's a lot of money. So that's where we are. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to put that in place today, and I don't know that I can. Tomorrow, I do know that the craft organization will come up with 3 bids. I'm expecting they'll be decent enough. I talked to Jim Corby. I expect we will be able to attribute the cost of that policy between the town and the stadium on a basis that's reasonable and fair. It's just a timing issue.
So that will be in addition to the Maya policy, if the craft organization can come up with that insurance?
John, I'm sorry. It'll be primary. It'll be the principal policy, but in addition to the law enforcement policy that Maya has, but it'll be the principal policy, and it will have enough coverage so that the expectation is that Maya would never have to kick in which case the Maya costs should go down because they're no longer principal on that law enforcement.
As far as the deductible goes, you said?
No, the policy costs should go down.
That'll sit as primary, and Maya will fall to secondary.
I thought there was no increase in the policy from last year.
I'm sorry, what?
I thought there was no increase in the policy from last year.
Well, there's no increase in the policy premium. There is an increase in the deductible. What should happen, is that both the deductible goes back to where it was, but part of the policy, it's not priced out. And so part of the policy, however, does include principal law enforcement townwide and for the stadium. That risk is, if we get this new policy in place, that risk is diminished greatly, and therefore the price of the premium should go down.
As you said, Dick, you were bringing this back from the beginning. How long is this, when did this start? Do you have the date of when this whole discussion started? Was it September of last year, or? Yeah,
No, it was later than
indemnification.
that.
Later than that?
I think it was probably early 2013.
January-ish?
Yeah, January,
It
February.
started coincident with the Weldon Dutton case.
Done case.
Okay.
Right.
Sean, do you have anything to add?
No, I think what Dick has explained, I think, where we are today very well. One thing in terms of the time frame is that it was contemplated, we had, I think, a tentative understanding that the Maya policy was going to remain in place, and that we could reach an agreement with the craft organization allocating the cost of the premium. And that would take care of the craft's responsibilities with respect to law enforcement protection. In that way, stadium events would be their responsibility in terms of the allocation of the premium. Non-stadium events would be our responsibility. But it was without the understanding that Maya looked at that, and Maya saw that there is no risk shifting either onto the crafts or onto Great Divide, and that's why I think they then reevaluated and came back with this increase in the deductible from $7,500 to $50,000. And it's that increase in the deductible, which is a fairly recent event, which has prompted us to go back to the crafts and say, okay, well, that's not going to work. We're not getting the benefit of what we were hoping to get, and the crafts understand that they had represented that they would provide us with coverage for stadium events, and so that's my understanding now. I've not been a party to those conversations that Dick has had within the last few days, but that's my understanding, is that they're going to go out and find substitute coverage that'll protect town law enforcement risk that arises out of our handling of Gillette Stadium events.
And when's the first event, Dick?
There are two soccer events, and I think one is pretty soon. I don't know exactly, but it's July 2nd, something like that. There's another soccer event, and then there's the Bon Jovi concert, which I think is July 20. And
I think it's 12, actually. I think it's sooner, so maybe
Yeah.
that's...
There's a Taylor
Oh, yeah.
Swift concert.
Taylor
in there
Swift
as
is the
well.
20.
when is it? Sir?
I think it's... the
Taylor
12th.
Swift is somewhere in the middle of
The
July.
20.
I think before the,
I think Bon Jovi's the 12th.
Yeah.
I asked Sean Gray, the clerk, today to reach out and talk with Dan Murphy. John, you have anything to add to the conversation?
Other than a recap of what was just been told, and he was he had some frustration in that they were unable to find a policy that they could buy on behalf of themselves that would cover a law enforcement operation. So the conversation ended there, and he didn't say that he was continuing. You actually filled in more than he
Okay.
gave me today.
Questions from the board? Mr. Lane?
So how will we get back to the $7,500 deductible? How does that happen?
Yeah, forget the timing issue, but that's important. But that aside, if we go forward with this plan, at the end of that process, which we hope won't be too far now, the town will become the principal insured on a law enforcement policy only that protects us or townwide, including events at the stadium. With that policy in place, then we don't depend on the Maya law enforcement policy. Okay? And so there's no reason to have a $50,000 deductible because they're no longer the primary insurer for law enforcement liability.
To further respond, my understanding is that the bid as described by Maya, the $50,000 deductible was going to be placed onto the coverage only if we did not get two things: indemnification protection, which they're satisfied that the indemnification language that was negotiated with the craft organization it gives us better protection than the old indemnification language. And the other piece that they wanted to see was a shift of law enforcement risk onto another policy purchased by the craft organization.
Right.
That's the piece they haven't seen.
Right.
And if they haven't seen that, then the deductible was going to go from 75 to 50. My understanding would be that if that is then demonstrated to them, whether it's effective July 1 or July 12 or July 20, we can then go back to Maya and say, okay, that has been satisfied as well. The deductible should go back to 7,500.
Is there any chance that this could drag on through July, and we're talking about this in August?
Yeah.
Because I thought this was all going to be settled tonight.
The answer is yes, John. The answer is yes. We hope not, and the delay right now is in the broker of record letter that frankly shouldn't have occurred, but it did. And when I talked to Jim Cobra yesterday, he said Once he has the broker of record letter, it could take 3 weeks, 4 weeks to get it done, you know. My approach would be, here's the broker of record letter, you don't have 3 weeks, you've got 2 weeks, you've got to get it done. And I think they appreciate the urgency. And so one would hope we could push them, but to be honest with you, yeah, it could.
Now, if we go back to Meyer and we say, you know, we'd like you to go back to the $7,500 deductible, and obviously by them going to the 50, that is a premium increase. If we go back to the 7,500, there's going to be a whopping increase. Is that something that they could present to us and say, sure, you could go back to that, but here's your new premium?
Yes, there's 2 ways to raise your insurance costs, premiums and deductible.
Well, it limits their risk.
So, yeah, I mean, I got a no today, and I asked to talk to a higher level. That's where we are right now.
Okay.
That's what I hope to do tomorrow, but I don't know what they'll say.
So
Lorraine?
if this was not taken care of by the Bon Jovi concert then, and now we're sitting here faced with a potential $50,000 deductible for an event.
I think we're facing it now.
Yeah. So
Miles of the first
should that happen, is there any approach that we can take with the craft organization to have some ownership of that deductible by them before
Yeah.
we even go through this bid process? Let's just settle that right up front.
Yes.
Can that be done in the next 5 days before July 1st? I mean, put it in simple terms, you know, if you get an issue with 10 people, there's $500,000 you're dealing with versus $75,000 a week ago.
Yeah, I think it has to be.
And I appreciate your candid answer. I don't see this getting resolved in July. You know, we've been somewhat privy to the discussions in between our counsel, Maya's attorney, Jim Corby and his group, and our town manager. It's like moving glaciers. And not that it's anyone's fault, but the dynamics of this is very, very slow. So I see July and into August before
Yeah.
we get any glimmer of, you know.
Yes, if we can't, reluctant to talk a lot here because, you know, I suspect Maya's listening, it's always the problem, right? But yeah, there are other things we'll try to do if we're unpersuasive tomorrow. But yeah.
Anything else, Jim? Jeannie?
Well, my question is if we have licensed events at the stadium, subject to this being cleared up by June 30th, what happens if this isn't resolved by June 30th? What happens to those licenses? We're holding those licenses right now.
I know we are. I can give you what the craft organization would say. This is not their fault. The delay is not their fault, and they ought not to be harmed because of it. I would tell you that we need to find a resolution of this before the next event, after the 1st of July. We need to find a resolution.
Well, would that be incentive for the craft organization to find the policies that the town is looking for?
Yeah, Jenny, but to be fair about it, they have been incentivized for it. They've been delayed because of the absence of the broker of record letter, and it's not their fault. They remain incentivized because we are holding licenses, and whosever fault it was, we have a mutual need to get it resolved.
Okay.
Anything else, Jeannie?
Nope.
Lorraine?
Just, again, I would want to understand how the shift of responsibility, the cost will shift to the craft organization to cover this big change, whatever it is, for the new policy, for the $50,000 deductible, whatever.
When do you next meet?
2 weeks. That's before we go down that road, let's finish this discussion, and then we'll talk about that.
July 9th.
That was it.
John?
The broker of record letter, when was it requested and when did it finally go out?
It was requested, 6-8 weeks ago, something like that, and it hasn't gone out.
It still hasn't gone out. Okay. Which means the craft organization cannot talk to insurance brokers?
It means they're representatives cannot talk to insurance companies that write the insurance.
So we're at a stalemate until that letter goes. And who would draft that letter?
Drafted it?
Who, you said it hasn't gone yet.
Right.
Who can draft it?
Well, the town manager can draft it.
Okay.
That's where it comes from.
I mean, could you guys, just to smooth
No, I
things
can get it,
along.
look, I can get it
If you can draft it,
drafted,
give
I
it
can
to Bob,
the
get it
language-
moving.
Yes, I can do that tomorrow morning.
All right. Otherwise, we're just gonna wait until that thing somehow materializes and leaves the building.
That has to happen right away.
The correspondence with the craft group today, they asked if we could have a special meeting in a couple of days. I said, I don't know how we can get together with the upcoming holiday before the 30th. At this point, it would be, if it was posted right now, would it be 7:30, 8 o'clock on Thursday night, correct, Bob?
Correct.
Is anybody amendable to that?
I can do 7:30.
Jenny?
Yeah.
You do.
Okay.
I have a meeting that night, but I'll see what I can do. I don't know right now.
I'm good, yeah.
You'd have to make it 8 because you're going to have to prepare it by the time you get it prepared and posted. You're not going to have that done in the next
Okay,
23 minutes.
May, 8,
Fine.
okay. Excuse me, Dick?
What's it, so you're talking about this Thursday, June 27th?
Correspondence with Mr. Murphy today. He expressed a great deal of concern. Jim Covery's out of town, could not be here tonight. Earlier in the day, he said he would be here, but it would be 7:45. I notified you of that. And then he would be here, and then that broke down. And John, did they add anything to you?
They both said that they could not be here tonight. I didn't talk to them about another meeting, though.
Right.
Makes sense, because they are very concerned that somehow these licenses won't get issued, and it puts the town and them in a pickle.
So basically, if I hear this board correctly, we're asking them to cover any deductibles from our insurance company. and
The
to
first
this-
thing, I'm going to try to do is to convince Maya to keep the deductible where it was, at least until the first concert. It's the first effort. Okay, the second is, and also to get that broker a record letter out in the morning, and to convince the craft organization, they're motivated to get going right away, to get the 3 policies that they say back to us, so you could pick one and choose and get it done. All right. If Meyer is intractable, if they're intractable, we need to discuss with the craft organization a fair apportionment of the $50,000 deductible, at least until we have this new policy in place. Now, the $50,000 is a deductible only if between now and when we have the policy in place, we do something bad. The town does something that creates a lawsuit for which we're...
Which is subject, just like any other lawsuit, to opinion and a court making final decision on it. I mean, whether whose fault or not, it's still, if there's a lawsuit and they name them and us, it's gonna go on for a while. So that's something that really doesn't matter to me, in all due respect. What really matters to me is that the $50,000 deductible is covered by the town. It's a great significance to the town for the money revenue stream that is created by the stadium that the town receives. To take that kind of risk is not happening right now. I mean, it's unthinkable for the town to take that kind of risk, Dick. So I'm saying, and I don't know if I'm speaking to the board, I'm speaking for myself here, you guys can weigh in. If the $50,000 deductible until this new insurance is not taken care of, or covered by them, and it has to be legally informed when it comes to the meeting Thursday night, because they're gonna get an hour Thursday, Dick. There's a lot of things going on with families just getting out of school. It's a great disservice to ask this board to come in on Thursday to do this. But we're gonna do it, because that's what this board does. It works together with all the community and all the businesses in town to make sure that it's amendable. Kids just get out of school today, a lot of families have plans, and this is butting into them. So they need to have everything in order on Thursday, and it better be convincing and short and sweet, or I'll just adjourn the meeting. Because I'm really not too happy about this. It's been dragging on since January 1st. He said, she said, it's been going back and forth, throwing stones at each other. It's ridiculous. So it needs to end Thursday, and I'm not taking, I'll publicly say right now, I'm not taking on the risk of a $50,000 deductible for the town of Foxborough. Anybody have anything to add?
One thing, actually, that 50,000, we're still unsure if that's per occurrence or per plaintiff.
Per plaintiff.
They say per
If it's a
plaintiff.
class action suit, it could be
1,000
per
people.
number of people in that
It could be
class
1,000
action.
people. It could
And,
be,
and if that happened, then we lost, the town would be broke.
absolutely would bankrupt the town.
But I understand the board's position that that's not an acceptable deductible.
No. So, I mean, I appreciate all you're doing. I know you're working hard.
I
But-
appreciate the instruction.
You know, for people to say that it's our town manager, and for people to say that it's them, I see no documentation of that. I asked for correspondence from the craft group saying that, well, we asked for this, we asked for that. I said, have it to me by 6:30, that you actually asked for that correspondence. I received nothing. And if this is so important, I would think that they would be amenable to coming here tonight and canceling their other plans. And I'm really just gonna leave it at that. Anybody have anything else to add?
Just the broker of record letter, you know, if there were concerns raised by Kevin, you know, what were those concerns?
The concerns were that the
And-
standard broker of record letter, as I understand it, Lorraine, I wasn't directly involved in that. Had that been signed, it would have placed in jeopardy the coverage we had with Maya. That's the way it was explained.
At that time.
John, how do you feel about that? Because if this board is going to ask me to sign that, I want to make sure that it does not jeopardize anything we have with Maya.
Yeah, I can confirm that with Maya, but my understanding was the way that the letter was crafted was to make the broker of record, as identified in that letter, the exclusive bargaining agent for the town with respect to purchasing law enforcement liability insurance. And it, in effect, would sever the relationship with Maya, and that's why Kevin didn't want to sign it.
All
And
right.
I don't blame Kevin for not wanting
But
to
it can
sign
be-
it. It was
could
at
be
a-
written in
at a
another
point-
way that wouldn't be-
Yes, I think it can, and I'll be happy to talk to Dick about, phrasing it in a way that
You
we
segregate the
can
insurance policies.
we can accomplish what needs to be accomplished tomorrow.
Thank you.
And if we can get confirmation from Maya that the language is acceptable to them and it's not going to put the town's policy at risk.
Right.
And that was one of the first items that came up back in January. It was proprietary information about the town's loss numbers that is going to go out public. And Kevin was adamant that that cannot be shared. He softened over time from the meetings back and forth, but it's been somewhat of a stalemate of late. So that's a good point, just to say we're going to vote to send off a letter, and it may harm the town by doing that. Is something that you got to consider.
Okay, so John, you'll concur with Bob on that?
Yes.
Tomorrow?
I will.
Excuse me, I forgot to ask if you were both available on Thursday. I asked the
I can
board.
be available. I
I
have a hearing down in the
apologize.
Cape, but I can get back in time for 8 o'clock.
So, anything else?
Do we have to take a vote to authorize the letter?
I think we have to vote about something else a little later that will take care of that authorization.
I just need a town manager.
Right, well, I just want to make sure there's no technicalities that
Would have the
negate the
authority.
letter.
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, okay,
I think it's fine, as long as we have a town manager acting.
okay.
Okay, 8 o'clock on Thursday. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Cindy, nice to see you.
Thanks, everybody. Love you.
Randy, before I disperse everybody, do you have anything to add, being the chief financial officer on this?
Make any
If you
notes.
could come up, please.
Make any note, John.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
I appreciate it.
So I completely concur with the direction of the board. I think $50,000 per claimant is too high a risk for the town to be taking. I'm concerned about a day, let alone 3 weeks. So I agree, you're taking the right course, and I appreciate that. And just as a note, this room and the McGinty are both booked at 7 o'clock next Thursday, so we have to find another
So
spot.
now we got another issue.
Days from now?
Yeah.
Now we got another issue. I forgot about that issue, Bob, earlier. Sandra informed me of that.
We'll figure out a spot.
Yeah, but we got to post it.
We got to post now.
We got to post it, so,
It's 48 hours.
Who's here at 7:30 on Thursday?
You have planning here, and then you have ZBA over at McGinty.
Can we go to the senior center?
It's not televised. This is something that needs to be televised without mobilizing,
High school.
media room at the high school, possibly. And I know Bob is got to go back to the poll. Excuse me, Frank? At Foxborough Cable Access itself? Yeah, well, we don't know what the occupation level of that room, and
What about the school committee room?
that's what we were just talking about, the media room in the
Oh.
school. Well, if we can't post a meeting, we got issues.
We just need to find a place.
Yeah, well, Bob needs to go. He has to go back to the polls, Mr. Cutler, so,
When I reach out to Mr. Yukna and see if they can't confirm for us whether or not,
Could you do that, Randy, and then we'll have Chris prepare a posting?
if she
to
could
be
prepare
before
the posting, and then we'll just add where and at the last minute. I really appreciate it, gentlemen. Thank you.
I'll have her start working on that. So it's
Great.
going to be Thursday, 8 o'clock.
Thank you.
We'll start with the Foxborough Media Center?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll check back with you in a minute.
Okay, we're almost back. Citizens input, it's a little late. Anybody have something to say at citizens input tonight? Michael?
Good evening. Here, wearing a few hats this evening. One is, I just want to read into the record the correspondence that the Water and Sewer Board voted on with regard to the Foxborough Realty Associates application for request for variance for a digital billboard. So I want to read this into the record, and then I've got a few editorial comments here. So it's dated June 17th. It's to the Board of Appeals. It's regarding the Foxborough Realty Associates application for request of variance digital billboard. Dear board members, please be advised that the Board of Water and Sewer Commission is opposed to any variance or special use permit associated with the above referenced application. The town of Foxborough, through the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners, owns 2 freestanding billboards which are incidentally managed by MPP Development LLC, a related company of the applicant. The Board of Water and Sewer Commission, as well as Route 1 business community, has waited patiently for the digital billboard bylaws to be promulgated and approved by a town meeting. A reasonable, orderly, and fair process that maximizes the opportunity for all concerned will better serve the interests of Foxborough. Digital billboards are coming and should be licensed through prudent land use policy. It's sincerely, I signed it as chairman, and we've carbon copied the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board. So I wanted just to get that into the record.
Just so you know, Mike, the clerk is going to make sure that gets into the record, because we don't have,
You want my copy?
I have a copy already.
Okay,
we don't
great.
have that here tonight, and we're relying on the minutes through the,
That's fine. I want to talk about a matter of grave concern, certainly to me, and I'm now speaking as a citizen, businessman, former selectman, and a water sewer commissioner. And that is, it's just come to my attention that I think we had all agreed years and years ago to have a point-to-point communications on what was the reuse water tank, billboards, and all this stuff. And I'm concerned about a pattern of conduct. It would appear that we've had some communications with this particular applicant. The who, what, when, where, and why, I think we can get into a little later. But we're going to have this conversation, because, we're sitting up there with an empty billboard that's been empty for a year. This applicant is proposing something else, and, I know, Kevin has explained this to me, we've had some conversation with these guys, and there was a discussion about revenue sharing. And this is wholly acceptable. So I would say, really, on a lot of levels, this is troubling, and we don't have a town manager anymore. And Jim, I'm going to say this to you as a former selectman who's walked in your shoes. As far as I'm concerned, you do have a conflict. I'd like you to recognize it, recuse yourself from these votes until you can get this thing ironed out with the Ethics Committee. The last thing any of us need right now is you having fighting a ethics issue. I'm tired of answering the questions. My
Mike,
constituents...
I'm going to stop you right there.
My
Listen,
constituents...
this is under
telling me-
citizens' input.
No, citizens'
Excuse me.
input.
If he's
Stop.
going to say, I've
You
got an
go.
ethics question.
No, I'm saying that being there, I believe you do. I'd like to see you get it in writing, straightened out with the Ethics Committee before someone sends a letter to them, and we've got another distraction here, talking about, you having to defend something that should have been handled differently.
First of all, Mike, I'm not sure what you're talking about. In the general public, you're saying I've got ethic issues without stating what they are.
Well,
So this
thank
is,
you.
first of all, as a former selectman, you should understand this is citizens' input, so I don't have the ability to speak back to you and have a dialogue. This issue is specifically on the agenda later, under action items. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. It's a sobering issue right now that you're coming up and making accusations and then walking away from the table. So,
Happy to... No,
so if you want to stick around
Sure.
under
What
action
time?
items when this talk,
Where's this?
It'd probably
read the
about-
agenda, Mike, it would be on there.
It'd probably be around 8:30.
No. What was it under?
It's under action on the,
Item 2 on the action items, billboard application for
So at that time, Mike, I'd be more than happy to talk to you if you have the time tonight
Yeah,
to stick
just-
around.
No, Jim, really.
okay, let's move on.
Mike, you
All right,
started
let's
something
move
and then
on.
you're going to walk
Let's
away.
move
If
on.
you could stay to the end of the meeting,
That I will,
when this
Jim.
is up, and we'll talk about it.
You know it.
Thank you. Okay,
The media center's okay.
yes, okay, we've got verification for the media center on Thursday, and that'll be posted. Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Name for the record, please, as
Greg
we're
Spear.
relying on microphones.
Perfect. And I'm representing the Route 1 Business Group organization, and I know we're on later on the agenda, but we just wanted to formally request a 2-week delay in discussing the new licensing and regulation for a commercial parking lot, partially because Chief O'Leary's been on vacation. We wanted to have some dialogue with it because there's been a couple changes that were made that we haven't been able to do. So I just thought it would be great, and if we could do it for July 9th, that's the next meeting, that would work. So we're open to that.
I'm not sure about the 9th, but I'm not going to say no. I
Okay.
don't know what the agenda holds at this point in
Okay.
time. Edward, you want to come forward?
Thank you. I was informed upon entry tonight. I have no objection. We'll continue to operate with the current regulations that are in place. Certainly, I have no problem in meeting with the membership and ironing out those points of discourse. 2 weeks might be more difficult to accomplish, so if the board could look forward and just notify myself and the members of the Route 1 businessmen that fits better into your schedule.
Would be the 23rd.
23rd, right, July
The
23rd.
23rd work, because I know I can put it on that agenda.
Oh, well, I mean, we're going to continue to operate
As,
under the current regulations until the board decides to adopt the new regulations.
okay.
Wouldn't that affect like the Taylor Swift and the Bon Jovi?
No, Taylor Swift, I think, is the 26th and 7th of that last weekend in July.
All right, that's
Okay.
fine. We
But,
just have to...
Bon Jovi's the 12th.
No, Bon Jovi is the 20th.
Okay, thank you.
What's the Taylor
So we got
Swift?
verification on those dates now.
Right, but we would, continue to
What's the
operate
Taylor
under
Swift concert?
the current.
20th.
20th.
So we don't need to have this
26th,
before the Bon
27th.
Jovi
20th
concert?
is
No,
Bon
I mean,
Jovi.
because we're operating in the old
existing.
regulation. We need to have it before.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? That's
Well,
from that
again,
group?
that's not my concern. My concern is a very busy agenda for the board. Certainly, if this group wants to bring that forward on the 9th, I'm not against that.
No, I understand, and we want to do that the 23rd. Anybody else want to speak? Please come to the mic.
Ron Young, Lafayette House. I think there's a lot more to discuss than just these written regulations that have come up to light in the past few days. And I think you need 2 meetings, one digest and a second meeting to really react to the first meeting. And I think if we run into the 20th, you saw what you had happen with the insurance, this is going to be the exact same scenario. And I would like to get it on the next agenda at any hour of the night.
Well, it's on the agenda tonight, just so you hear me out. So I can move this up to right now, so we can have a discussion about this. I can jump the agenda.
Well,
So I'm just saying, so it's public, so we can respond to you as a board, it's on the agenda, so we can speak about this
there's a
now.
lot more to those regulations than are written in front of you that we really need to talk about.
Oh, I understand, Ron. But what I'm saying is, does anybody object to having a quick conversation about this, what date and when to do it now? Being it's on the agenda tonight, so
Unless
we
I'm
can
missing-
respond.
It's on at 8:05, and it says proposed revisions to commercial parking regulations.
Right.
Unless I'm missing something, I think that's the topic.
Right.
So why push it off if we can at least start it now, figure out what's more to it, and then continue it?
But that action item is for information coming our way.
Well, it's got to start somewhere.
Right.
You know?
That's okay with me.
Lorraine?
I'm fine.
The problem is you're only gonna get a few of.
Excuse me, oh, Mike, you gotta use the mic, or I'm gonna get chastised by the whole general public tomorrow in the paper, right, Frank?
We don't want that to happen. Mike Saig, 8 Kendall Drive. There's several issues here, and I think that we wanted time to spend with the chief and some of our other members before we came back to you. It will save a lot of time if we have time to work on it than getting into a couple of issues tonight and then just having more.
So if we can have some prelim feedback on the 9th and then
Right.
meet extensively at the 20th.
Correct.
Well, I asked Ginny to spearhead this subject early in the week. She's done a great job with it. I think she's reached out to all of you. She's very dedicated. Ginny, do you have anything to add? Because this is your ball game here.
Well, I know, looking at the regulations, I myself had some questions on why things were being omitted and why things were being added. And what I wanted to do was to have a meeting with Chief O'Leary and the people who were affected to find out why, why these things were being changed and maybe offer more input. Because this isn't the final, it's my understanding this is like the first draft of the revision, so it's not the final. So I would like to have some time to meet with Chief O'Leary and the.
And we agree.
other-
We agree with that.
We agree. We
Right.
kind of tentatively scheduled for something later this week, which we just talked about today because we had a meeting. So
Right.
that would be great, rather than wasting the board's time to at least work out a few things. And then on the 9th, even if you give us 5 minutes, we should be able
Well,
to.
there's only one issue at hand now, and Jimmy, I can see, wants to speak on that, and he has every right to. That's why I think we need to keep, oh, that's action, I'm sorry. That's on action later. With
about the,
with
Yeah,
the,
that's a different,
That's,
topic.
two different
two different comments, but, all right, so you don't, seeing that Ginny's throwing a little more light on this, do you have an issue with putting this off to the 9th?
Oh, no, I just thought I heard from
Ron?
Ron or another business owner that there's too much to put off and squeeze it later, so I figured why not start now? I don't have a preference either way. To be honest with you, I don't know what is going on in the background that's not in the regulations, so
It would be good to have a meeting where we can work it out and then.
So
come in.
Ron, you're not objecting to the 9th and the 23rd? All right, so we're gonna give you 15 minutes on the 9th,
Perfect.
and then we'll give you 20 minutes on the 23rd?
Done.
Okay,
That'd be
thank you.
Okay, and can you, Chief O'Leary, can we coordinate a meeting?
Certainly, I'll take care of that.
So Jenny will reach out to Chief O'Leary,
Okay.
and you guys will get together, and
that okay?
if you guys have a meeting of your own going on with any other entity, could you notify Jenny so she can be there, so she
Yes.
can keep the board informed?
Absolutely. Yes.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, John,
Thank you.
good?
I'm good, I'm just writing this down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want me
Somebody
to?
got it.
I wrote something handwritten. I don't know if you need.
Is that crayon?
That's crayon.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, moving on. Is Tara here? Okay, could you have her come in, please? Okay, the board has asked many times, I should say many times, but I'll hand this over to Jimmy DeBellis, because he was the chairman when this came over, about sexual abuse policy coming from the Sheehan matter. Jimmy, if you want to just update the public on what this is all about?
Sure. I mean, I can certainly speak on it, but I don't think I'm any different than any of the other board members, because we've all kind of walked the same steps over the last couple months. This initiated from the Sheehan sexual abuse allegations from the 70s and 80s that's went on for 20 or 30 years. And when we looked into it, there's, starting at that level, was anything reported? How was it reported? What records were kept? In kind of a chain of command of an event. And we found out the town of Foxborough does not have, and no different than many other towns, a policy on sexual abuse reporting. So if something happens, can somebody go, if I'm an employee of the town and I see something happening, can I tell my boss without fear of getting fired? Do I tell my boss, or do I go to the police? Or do I tell my coworkers? And what's the chain of command after that, and where are the action items? So Kevin Pecos and a group of people from town, and I think they grabbed different departments, put together a policy a couple months ago. It wasn't quite, I think, what the board collectively wanted, so they said they'd take a second shot. We received last week a policy called the Town of Foxborough's Child Sex Abuse Reporting Policy, and I think it's a group effort to, with some outside help, to put down the thoughts of the town. And I'll just read the purpose at the beginning, and I'll leave it at that. Youth-serving organizations strive to create a safe environment for youth, employees, and volunteers so that youth can grow, learn, and have fun. Part of creating a safe environment is making sure that youth are not harmed in any way while participating in organization-sponsored activities. One risk in any organization working directly with youth is child sexual abuse, and it goes on, and this is in draft. So it's on the agenda tonight for some, I guess, some of the authors of this to present it back to the board and probably answer questions and then see where we go from there.
Thank you, Julie. Tara, would you, I imagine you're Tara?
I am.
Tara, could you sit down, please?
Sure.
Is there anybody that came with you, or just
I was working with Cindy.
Cindy,
I don't know
supposed
where
to be
she is
with
at
us.
this moment in time.
Randy? Could you find Cindy, please?
Yep.
I think she's in Kevin's office or Bob's. And Sarah, is Sager?
Sager.
Sager.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad I could be here.
Great. We'll just wait for Cindy, and then we'll.
Yeah, and then we're just setting up a little bit of a PowerPoint. You'll be able
Great.
to hear me okay. I can just introduce myself briefly while we're waiting. So my name is Tara Sager, and I am the Mental Health Coordinator for Norfolk Advocates for Children in Foxborough. So my role there is I see children after they have disclosed physical or sexual abuse, and I make referrals for them and for their families to trauma-informed therapists in the area who can provide them support in moving through, obviously, a very difficult time. And I appreciate being able to be here tonight. I know it's not the easiest topic to discuss, but it's obviously one that's very important, and I was able to give some input on the new policy. I'm not going to talk specifically about the policy. I think that Cindy is going to do that when she joins us, but I was going to talk just a little bit about some of the feedback that I gave and about some of the legal definitions of neglect and abuse, and specifically about the behavioral and emotional indicators, because whether people in this room are working directly with children or overseeing the systems that influence children, or if you're parents and you have children or friends of your children in your own home, this is such a prevalent problem, and I think that it's really important that as a community we start the discussion about it, because it's not the easiest thing to talk about.
Great. Thank you for the introduction. Cindy, you want to take it as soon as Randy's ready? And obviously, you need to come up to the mic. Is that okay?
Sure. Of course.
It's mic night.
Mike night.
Push that a little closer. There you go.
Thank you, Randy.
Got one of the lights?
You know how.
It's a secret code.
Great. Did you want to say anything, or am I good to go? Yeah.
Thank that one, good, Randy. Thank you. Okay, Cindy.
Actually, Tara's going to do the presentation, and then I can speak on some of her recommendations for the policy.
Okay, great.
Great. So I'm going to go through a lot of information really quickly because I know you have a full agenda tonight, but I just wanted to start by a few national statistics. In 2010, it was an estimated 3.3 million referrals for child abuse and neglect were received by public social service or child protective service agencies. And because there were multiple children in the home, those referrals included about 5.9 million children. More than 75% had suffered from neglect. More than 15% had suffered from physical abuse, and approximately 10% had suffered from sexual abuse. That number is significantly less than the others because sexual abuse is often not disclosed, so the statistics that we talk about are just reported cases, but the majority of the cases don't go reported. A report of child abuse is made nationally every 10 seconds. So in the approximately 30 minutes that I'll be here talking briefly about this, that means there will be over 180 reports of child abuse in our nation. A few things just to keep in mind. More than 90% of juvenile sexual abuse victims knew their perpetrator in some way. It could be somebody in their home, it could be a caregiver, it could be a coach or somebody in their school system. Child abuse occurs across socioeconomic levels, across ethnic and cultural lines, within all regions and in all levels of education. It occurs in this community and every community around us. About 80% of 21-year-olds that were abused as children met criteria for at least one psychological disorder. When I'm not at Norfolk Advocates for Children, I'm the clinical director at one of JRI's residential programs in Concord, where I've been for about 11 years now, and I work with kids who have been exposed to chronic trauma and abuse, and they all have multiple diagnoses and lasting impacts by this, things like depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, other mood disorders that we see pretty commonly. Happens equally with boys and girls. When we talk specifically about sexual abuse, the statistic is about 1 in every 4 girls discloses abuse and 1 in every 6 boys. But as I said, because so many cases go unreported, it's really important that conversations like this start to take place and that some of the behavioral and emotional indicators that I'll talk about very briefly today are things that are on your radar in your everyday life. Most people are probably aware about the Department of Children and Families called DCF. That's our Massachusetts state agency that's responsible for helping families and protecting children from child abuse and neglect. They were formerly called the Department of Social Services, so you may have heard the acronym DSS before. DCF responds to reports of abuse and neglect 24 hours a day. I actually spoke at a conference this morning with about 150 hotline workers who have multiple cases of child abuse coming across their desk daily, and that's all just in our region. DCF becomes involved if there are any concerns that caretakers, that includes parents, step-parents, guardians, coaches, community and recreational activity leaders, any person who's responsible for caring for children may be abusing or neglecting them. So the most important piece, how do we recognize child abuse and neglect? And we're going to talk about some legal definitions. The legal definition of neglect is failure by a caretaker, either deliberately or through negligence, to provide a child with minimally adequate food, clothing, shelter, medical care, supervision, emotional stability, and growth. Just to kind of clarify, that's provided that that's not due to inadequate economic resources or a handicapping condition that prevents them from doing so. Some of the behavioral signs of neglect: unattended medical or dental needs, consistent lack of supervision, the child actually reporting that there's no caretaker at home, consistent hunger or nutritional deficiencies. This may be a child who's stealing food from an activity and trying to hide it, or really focused on trying to get food from their peers at lunch or if they're in your home. Regular or chronic fatigue and listlessness due to the difficulties with getting their basic needs met at home. They could be inappropriately dressed for weather, poor hygiene. You may see developmental delays with this group, and irregular or non-attendance at school or in childcare. The emotional signs of neglect are depression, poor impulse control, constantly looking for attention from people in their lives and affection, a lack of parental participation in activities, people who aren't showing up at sporting events continuously. I should say, just to specify all of this, any one of these indicators alone does not indicate abuse. It's looking at it in the context of a larger picture. Lack of trust in others, feeling like the world is unpredictable, or taking over that adult caring role. One thing that I wanted to just include in this piece is child abuse and domestic violence often occur in the same family, and a child who is witness to domestic violence in their home is experiencing neglect because the caregiver is not providing adequate supervision and is not keeping them in a safe environment. We're going to talk very briefly at the end about mandated reporting policies, and then I'm happy to talk more about that in the future if it's something that people are interested in. But if you are a mandated reporter or you're a citizen who just wants to make a report, if you are aware that a child has witnessed domestic violence in the home, even if nothing directly has physically happened to them, you do have a right to file and get DCF involved. And if you're a mandated reporter, you have a responsibility to do so. Signs of physical abuse can be a little bit more clear than sexual abuse, which we'll talk about in a minute. This is injury. You may see injuries that are not consistent with the explanation offered, the presence of several different injuries that are in various stages of healing, injuries that may form the shape of a pattern of an object that may have been used, facial injuries in infants and preschool children, thinking mostly about whether or not injuries are consistent with the child's age and development. I have a 2-year-old at home, and she has bumps and bruises all over her because she's a little daredevil, but you have to think about if you have an infant who has bruises on their body and they don't have the ability to actually move around yet, that's probably a sign that there could be something going on that needs to be investigated. Sadly, bald patches on a child's head where their hair may have been pulled, repeated poisonings or accidents. Behavioral indicators. The child may have difficulty recalling how the injuries occurred or offered an inconsistent explanation. Usually adults in that situation would tell somebody, if somebody asks you about this, this is what you should say. When that gets mixed up with what actually happened, you may see some inconsistencies.
Tara?
Yes.
I may interrupt you for 1 minute.
Sure.
I just have to open up a public hearing, and then we'll put it on hold for 1 second, so don't
I don't
go.
know what
It's
that
only
means,
take
but
us
sure.
30 seconds, because by law, we have to do it.
Which one is this?
It's, looking broadly. Restraint, yep.
Good right now.
Being 7:40, the board has to open up a public hearing, so I'm going to ask the clerk to read the public hearing notice.
The Board of Selectmen pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 140, Section 157, will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, June 25th, 2013, at 7:40 PM in the Andrew A. Gallo Jr. Meeting Room, Town Hall, 40 South Street, Foxborough, Mass., to consider the restraint or disposal of a Springer Spaniel from the town of Foxborough. The dog is owned by Peter and Mary Ann Prenos, 10 Alger Road, Foxborough, Massachusetts. Interested parties are invited to attend this hearing, submitted by the Board of Selectmen, Foxborough, Mass., John R. Gray, Clerk.
Thank you. Are all parties present? Okay. Sue, you're here? Yes. Do you mind if we finish this and then go on to your public hearing? Or do you want us to stop and start this public hearing now? This is going to take another 20 minutes. If it's,
This would be quick, I think. Want me to move to the side?
okay.
Whatever you want to do.
How would the board feel? Want to take
I
this?
don't know if you'll break this in the middle, though. Whatever you want.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to break this in the middle.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea.
I'd appreciate it, so we'll continue the public hearing until 8 o'clock.
Okay.
We need to vote on that?
I don't think so.
Okay. No?
So moved, whatever.
All right, I get a second. Move it to 8 o'clock. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That's everybody, 5-0. Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so unprovoked cruelty to animals could be another behavioral indicator, giving information that a child could be exposed to physical abuse in the home. Wearing clothing not appropriate to weather. We talked about this a little bit with neglect. That could be when there's a caregiver who's not providing adequate clothing. In this case, it could be if a child's trying to cover bruises on their body. Reoccurring physical symptoms like headaches or stomach aches. They may flinch if they're touched unexpectedly. This child may be running away from home. Vacant stares or frozen watchfulness and no attempt to seek support when hurt. Emotional indicators, expressing a fear of going home, being wary of adults, being overly compliant or eager to please, showing sadness or crying frequently, and displaying poor memory and concentration, or an apprehension or fear caused by crying of other children. Sexual abuse, The legal definition of sexual abuse is any sexual contact between a caregiver and a child. So that's not only limited to bodily contact, but exposure to pornography, using verbally enticing language or pressuring a child for sex, fondling, masturbation, sexual exploitation. The definition is very wide. Physical indicators of sexual abuse are obviously going to be a little bit more difficult to assess, but these are things that people should be mindful of. Fatigue due to sleep disturbances, sudden changes in weight. Children may experience some sort of self-mutilation or self-harm, so there may be physical cuts on their body. Recurring physical ailments, difficulty in walking or sitting, unusual or excessive itching in the genital areas due to infections or injuries to those areas. I'm going to talk just very briefly before we wrap up about some of the behavioral indicators in younger children versus older children. And again, I know that some of these aren't easy to read or to talk about, but I think that because this is such an underreported but prevalent issue in our community, it's really important that we're able to start the conversation about it. So children who have experienced sexual abuse may show sadness, they may cry often, they may be very anxious, display a short attention span, change or loss of appetite, sleep disturbances and nightmares. They may present as excessively dependent on other people. They may express a fear of being home or a specific location. It could be excessive fear of men or women, a lack of trust in others. Age-inappropriate sexual play with toys, with themselves, with peers, sexually explicit drawings. There is a certain amount of sex play in this age group that is developmentally appropriate, but you want to think about if the information that they have or that they're expressing is unusual in some way or sophisticated beyond information that they should have at their age. You may say reverting to bedwetting or accidents. This is a very common thing across the board, seeing some sort of regression, specifically in younger children, a developmental task that was already mastered at one point, so sleeping alone in their bed or toilet training, there's a regression in this area when they've been exposed to abuse. Poor peer relationships or self-image, dramatic behavioral changes or sudden non-participation in activities, overall just verbalizing poor self-care or poor self-esteem, and feeling threatened by physical contact or closeness with others. Moving into older children and some of the behavioral indicators that you may see with them, there may be a sudden lack of interest in friends or in activities, a fearful or startled response to touching, overwhelming interest in sexual activities, hostility toward authority figures, need for constant companionship, regression in communication patterns, academic difficulties, truancy and/or running away from home, recurrent physical complaints that are without physiological basis, lack of ability to trust others, unable to have fun with others. You may see suicide attempts, drug and alcohol misuse, poor personal hygiene, and promiscuity. One of the strongest indicators of sexual abuse is a child's report that they're being sexually abused. When a child says that he or she has been sexually abused, it's really important that you take the statement seriously and resolve doubt in favor of the child and err on the side of protection. And this may sound obvious, but sadly it's not. And I come across many children in my work every single day who have told somebody about abuse in a more indirect way, which I'll talk about in a minute, and nobody did anything because they didn't want to believe that something like that was happening. Some of the indirect ways that a child may disclose is giving a hint, so my babysitter keeps bothering me, something a little bit more vague, a disguised disclosure, what would happen if somebody was being touched in a bad way and she told somebody about it, a disclosure with strings attached to it, I have a problem, but if I tell you about it, you have to promise not to tell. These are three of the most common areas. It's also very common for a child to recant a disclosure once they've made it. That's a very natural part of the disclosure process. Usually there's some sort of statement about what happened, and then you sit back a little bit and wait and see how people are going to react to it. And depending on their reaction, and if you're supported by the people in your life, then usually a child will fully disclose. So if you are in a situation where somebody discloses to you or you suspect abuse, what do you do? How to respond to a direct disclosure. Find a place that is private to talk to the child. You want to sit near them, put him or her at ease, never touch the child, remain calm, listen to them, but do not press them for details beyond that which they are able to share at that time, and use the child's language. Reassure them, but do so realistically. Don't ever make a promise that you won't tell anybody. Try to get enough information to determine the child's safety. An immediate action is necessary if you think that the child is in imminent danger. The child must feel supported, and you want to let them know what you'll do now that you know about the abuse or the neglect. Part of what we do at Norfolk Advocates for Children, for people who aren't aware, is we conduct SANE interviews. And what that means is we have a forensic interviewer on the other side of a two-way mirror, and on the other side at a table just like this, we have a representation from the police department, from DCF, myself to provide referrals for mental health treatment, an advocate who can advocate for the legal process, and a district attorney. So the child can go through the actual details of what happened just one time in the safety of a room with one person. Everybody else will have the information that they need then to carry on their investigations. And limiting the time that the child has to tell the story promotes the chance that they'll heal. So if you are a teacher, a coach, a child care provider, anybody who's making a report to the Department of Children and Families, you're absolutely not responsible for proving that abuse or neglect occurred. Having a suspicion based on good faith that a child is in a dangerous situation is all that you need to have enough evidence to make a report. I'm just going to fly through these really quickly as far as the legal requirements to file. I'm not going to read through this list, but many people are considered mandated reporters. The biggest thing to kind of keep in mind is if you're a person who's paid to care for or work with a child, you are a mandated reporter. If that is the case, there's a legal requirement to file. Massachusetts law requires mandated reporters to immediately make an oral report to DCF when in their professional capacity they have reasonable cause to believe that a child under the age of 18 is suffering from abuse or neglect. Mandated reporters may also choose to contact the local police if they suspect abuse or neglect. The actual call, the phone call, has to be made immediately. I will leave, before I leave, some pamphlets on the table in the back that has all the contact information that you would need for mandated reporting. And then a written report also must be submitted if you're a mandated reporter within 48 hours. Everybody else, just a citizen who observes something and has concerns, you would still call the same hotline information that will be on the pamphlet. You can make an anonymous report in that case, and there isn't a written requirement. The number is here. To make a report, you call the DCF area office serving the child's residence, and you ask for the protective screening unit. There's a child at-risk hotline, which, as I said, is available 24 hours a day. You would be asked identifying information that you have about the child or the caretaker, the nature and extent of the suspected abuse, and any information that you have, the circumstances under which you became aware of the child's injuries or abuse, what action, if any, has been taken, and any information that you believe would be important to the investigation in your contact information. If you are a mandated reporter by law and you fail to make either of these reports, it can be punishable by a fine of up to $5,000 or imprisonment of up to 2.5 years, or both in extreme circumstances. But the flip side to this is if you make a report in good faith, you're protected from all liability. Nobody can sue you for harassment or say that you did anything wrong in that case. As long as you did it in good faith based on the information that we talked about today and you had good cause to believe that a child was in danger, you're protected from all legal or criminal action. So this is just an example of the back page of the pamphlet that I will leave in the back. I'll also leave some information about Norfolk Advocates for Children and some resources that you can just take with you. I know Cindy's going to talk a little bit more specifically about the policy, but I'm also available at Norfolk Advocates for Children if anybody wanted to talk through any of this more. My contact information will be on there as well. So I know that everybody has a lot of other things going on. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and just even briefly start the conversation because this is such an important issue for our community. And if we all have eyes out there to try to protect our children, we can hopefully see those statistics drastically change. So I'll kind of turn it over to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cindy, to you.
So there's a couple of different items. First, I really appreciate you coming out. I appreciate you looking at various items that we sent. I think it's very true. The more eyes we put on this, the more we protect the children in our communities. So with the more recent policy that was sent out, it is strictly based on sexual abuse and not the other areas that were in the first policy. And I don't know if you want one that is strictly that or integrated and collectively. I guess maybe some direction on that would be helpful to see if you want it
Jim,
integrated.
You want to start?
Yeah, just some general thoughts. And again, Cindy, thank you, and Tara, thank you for coming out. You know, we had asked for a policy for reporting. So in a way, you can look at it at that point, the horse is out of the barn, and you're dealing with something that has happened after the fact, and you're coming onto it and what to do. What you gave us was kind of 3 steps. It actually, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, this is what I'm seeing. You put this into 3 steps. The initial interview and screening. So if you're trying to employ somebody for the town, whether it's the recreation or the DPW or any of the school, it's the questions to ask, it's the CORI, the SORI checks, all the steps leading up to the interview process and how to carry that out. And then there's also the middle part where you're talking about monitoring it, and if someone wants to go to the bathroom, there's 2 people versus 1, and you know, the day-to-day activities dealing with this type of, and then the third part is the actual reporting. So I think it's a lot more than what I had asked for. I think that what the board had talked about, you brought it to a kind of a more in-depth level. But overall, it seems like what this document is how to write a policy, right? It's not a policy, it's if you're going to do, you know, it just seems like the steps that you should consider when doing it, but this is not a policy, right?
Well, this is a policy taking the various things, so we don't have to include the recruitment part of it, and I didn't know if that's useful. There's a few areas where and I didn't highlight, I apologize, in the ones I sent out, where there's 3 options I'm giving because I need to find out from staff, where I don't want to lock people's hands and say, you know, here's the 3 options, but we're going to do this one, because I don't know what's reasonable for some of the departments like recreation. We can definitely take out those pieces of it. I just want to make sure I'm giving
what I'm saying,
everything.
you gave a lot more than I think we asked, and I think it's a good thing.
Oh, okay, all right, good.
But you see things like, you know, you may want to do this, or you should do this, or you could do this, rather than
This
if you're
is the
hiring someone,
policy.
this is, you do this, this, and the other thing. So that's what I'm saying, it's not a
Well
policy,
worded,
it's
yeah.
going in that direction.
Yep.
And
No, I
was wondering,
understand what you're
are you
saying.
thinking of taking it to the next step and actually putting it into a policy?
Yes, but I wanted to get some feedback on whether or not you wanted all of this stuff in there, because I know it was a little bit more than you asked, but I thought it was rather important in training employees when they're recruiting, you know, as part of the interview process. I do some of it, they do some of it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in here. We can make that separate. It's whatever you feel is reasonable. And then we just change the wording around, and it becomes the policy.
Okay.
Not may and should, you will.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, from a selectman's perspective, you know, we have all thoughts and ideas, but from an HR director,
Yeah.
I think we're going to rely on you to say, yes, you can ask that question, or, you know, there was
Right.
talking about here a felony. I don't know, can you ask about a felony, or 5 years later, is
Right.
it off the record? That's what we need to rely on you. But
Right.
I think going in the direction of taking this and putting it into a policy, I think is the
Okay,
right
so
thing.
include all these sort of steps, and I'll change it to what you will do and what you
Yeah, I mean,
should do
that's-
or may do.
I mean,
what you will
that's
do.
my opinion, but I'm anxious to
Thank
hear
you.
what the board has to say.
Lorraine, you have something to add?
Yeah, you know, I agree with Jim. This really helps lay out all the sections that we really need to look at. We were really focusing on the back end of it before, the reporting aspect of it.
Right.
And I think, you know, I was thinking that maybe if we could consider having a group now, if you were to work with someone, say, from the Board of Recreation,
Yeah.
and, you know, Debbie as the Recreation Director, and just take this in chunks, like the hiring process, because that's where the majority of our encounters with children will be, is through the Recreation Department. They hire young counselors for the
Yep.
summer, or, you know,
Right.
individuals with programs, and making sure that we have all of the interviewing procedures in place for, and background checking procedures in place for even that age group. What can we do with that age group in terms of training even?
Right.
And actual policy. Again, I'm an employee of the YMCA, and we receive annual training on this, and
Right.
just basic things like we are not allowed to permit a child to go with another child to a large bathroom unaccompanied by another adult.
Right.
Because, there's evidence, and that's part of the training. They show
Yeah.
that even under those circumstances, 2 young children, there can be abuse happening.
Indeed. Right.
So, coming up with those procedures to follow from higher through
The could
report,
be's, would be's.
evaluation and training
Yep.
to reporting, and especially making sure that we're careful where we're not dealing with mandated reports, with the exception of Recreation Department, it appears would be in that
Yes,
category of
'cause they care for
mandated
children,
reporters.
yes.
So making sure that they absolutely have all the correct training documented, and,
Right.
so I think this was a good way of organizing all the things that we have to look at and addressing them, so thank
Right.
you.
Well, we can definitely change the wording, and I do need to meet with a few of the folks, and I should have highlighted that, and I apologize, because I even wrote my notes like, oh my goodness, this isn't highlighted for you to see the areas where it says I need to meet with.
I would envision you'd end up with a number of different policies in those categories, not that this is all one.
All encompassing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be too big if it were all encompassing. I think we may carve out a recruitment policy,
Yep.
and whether you're responsible for children or not responsible for children, then it's just NA, it's one policy, and then if it doesn't apply to you, you just go to the next piece of it, and then the education and the training are going to be the next step.
And what Jim had mentioned about, a question about a felony conviction.
Yep.
Again, different companies have, related to their business, if you have a conviction in a
Right.
certain area, you will never be hireable.
Right.
And so, whatever the obvious
There's
ones that
different
would
standards, right,
pertain to a childcare situation would be
Right.
good to research also.
right.
Thanks.
Nope, that's good.
Thank you, Lorraine. Ginny? anything?
Yeah, when I read this, it was very comprehensive, but I looked at it as how to write the policy.
Right.
So I was thinking of this as the first step.
Don't hit the table, Ginny.
The first step, and the second step would be putting like a group together to take these suggestions
Definitely.
and then doing that. So that's.
No, I agree, and that was my next step and the notes to, it shouldn't be me making that decision. It should be who this policy affects most, and what's fair and reasonable, and what's mandated legally.
Mm-hmm.
And sitting with them to say, okay, because we may need a couple of carve-outs within the policy.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to make sure we hit all the areas that surrounded this and made sure it was, because it seemed like the last one was really vague and not really, I think, what you were looking for, so I wanted to make sure we were getting a little closer anyway.
All set, Ginny?
Yep.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, actually, I was encouraged to find out that we actually have a policy manual, so that when policies are drafted and approved,
Yes.
they wind up in a book. But, yeah, actually, there were a lot of shoulds in me, and so it
Yep.
needs to be tightened up, and actually make it into a formal policy. But it is comprehensive, and, I think it's a good start.
Great. And I have to tell you that Tara's been wonderful, too. Go ahead, yeah.
Back in April, I was at the Selectmen's meeting, and Kevin had said, well, perhaps we'll hire a consultant to work with you to write this. Did we hire a consultant?
I don't think we ever did, no.
Okay.
Well, I didn't. To my knowledge, there hasn't been any, but we did.
Well, I didn't know if it was were you working to write this policy, or?
No, Tara was just giving me some advice. She was commenting, like, you may want to add this or take away that. And she's been great about coming in to do this, and she's going to come in to do further, like, with staff, because once we do this, I really think it's important that the education piece happen, and not just from me, but from somebody who lives and breathes this. So,
Can you all set, Jim?
All set.
So, if I'm understanding you correctly, you will have like 3 different policies here, one for hiring
yep,
and screening, and then one for reporting.
yes.
So does that sound right, Tara? Is that how we should go about this?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the reporting piece, there will be obviously the legal guidelines that have to be taken into account
Right.
because, I mean, I'm not familiar with all, like, the recreation department, everybody, but I mean, anybody
Yeah.
who is directly responsible for taking care of children have to be made aware of the mandated reporting policies, and so I think that has to be its own kind of specific focus, and then everything else is more about prevention and being proactive, which I think is just, you can't have one conversation without the other.
Right.
So I think that
And then the other one would be reporting guidelines and showing all the legalities of it, saying you're not you can't be sued,
Right,
blah, 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 and you're
There's
mandated
no
by law, you
malintent,
could be
right.
fined or convicted.
right.
I think that's a good way to go. Does everybody agree?
Can I ask one more
All right, sure.
one more question? In terms of child abuse as the policy versus just focusing on sexual abuse, personally, I thought that we should be looking and training for people to look for all aspects of it since they seem
Yeah.
intertwined. And so, it was just something I wanted to throw out there also as you
Yeah,
as
actually,
you talk to the recreation group to
Right.
see, again, where we have young people working with young children
right.
to provide all the training to look for these signs and, try and intercept things as early as possible.
That was one of the things that Tara was super helpful with, and actually is a recommendation that I was making separately. And it doesn't necessarily have to be integrated, but that was one of the things that Tara did mention, is that it's great, to the sexual abuse and making awareness and education, but that we shouldn't forget all the other signs of abuse. And I thought there's no reason we can't have that as an educational piece, even as a policy, for people to understand. I mean, we have part of it built here. There's no reason we can't finish this piece, and then, they do go hand in hand in some ways, and in others they don't. But, so I appreciate that. That is a good point, and I know that was one of the points that Tara had made, that don't forget these other child abuse categories. They're important.
Thank you.
So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Does anybody in the audience wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none? Okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Tara.
It's very
Appreciate
informative.
it.
Cindy, you'll take it from here, and
Yes,
you let me know when you want to put it back on the agenda with the final result.
you got it.
And do you need any help from anybody on the board, or anything, you need any outside help?
I think we have a much more comprehensive piece of work to work with. So I think we're good working with the different departments who sort of live and breathe this, are going to really change how we word some of the areas. So I think we're good.
Great, thank
All
you. If
right,
you need
but
any
thank
help,
you.
let us know.
I will, thank
All
you
right,
very much. I
appreciate it.
appreciate it.
Okay.
This is all the info up here.
I'm gonna go back to the public hearing. Would anybody interested in the restrainment or of the Springer Spaniel, please come forward and sit at the table that wishes to speak. Obviously, Sue. Unfortunately, you do have to sit at the table because, yes. We don't bite. We're very nice. No pun intended either. It just came out like that. Welcome. Jim, we can start on my left. Name for the record, please, because we are speaking to a microphone tonight.
Tim Kennedy, 6 Alger Road.
Sue Thibodeau, Animal Control Officer. Mary Ann Prinos, 10 Alger Road.
Peter Prinos, 10 Alger Road.
Okay, welcome. Sue, would you like to
Thank you.
start?
Alrighty. I asked the board to consider making a order permanent that was imposed on the Prinos for their dog after he bit someone on the 13th. This was because it was the third bite and the second bite under similar circumstances. I've asked for a muzzle order, to declare the dog dangerous and for a muzzle order.
Permanent muzzle order or
Yes.
just outside the house?
Went off the property.
Off the property.
You should have the
Yeah, I do.
the
I just
actual
want to
wording.
make that clear
Yes,
to the
yeah.
public because they don't have this documentation
Sure,
at home.
certainly.
So, okay.
There is a clarification I should make in the report, and that was, I stated there was only one other complaint about Oliver, and that was that he was roaming back in December, I believe. I stated in my report that on following up with that person that made the complaint, they said that he had been in their yard 2 weeks prior. That was incorrect. In talking to her again, she had mistaken the animal for another animal, another dog in the neighborhood.
Because I know it was
So I-
rebutted in the report, correct?
Yes,
Right.
correct. So in following up with that person,
Okay.
in fact, she stated it was not Oliver that she did see again.
And you have no problem with these conditions that Sue wants to imply?
I have no problem.
Okay.
So he's in an electric fence, I muzzle him off the property. Anyone that comes into the house, I muzzle him. He's fine with that.
I've never
I
met an
don't-
aggressive Springer Spaniel in my life.
They're
It's
very
really-
anxious. They're
Yeah.
anxious animals, and unfortunately, he was brought up to the tennis court,
Losing
and,
the balls.
Well, he's just outside of his comfort zone.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
And someone who pats him, he just nips. It's not like he's like vicious, he just nips and stay back, and
Right,
that's what happened.
right. And, I do know, I've had dogs my whole life. When they're on a leash, they're more aggressive too. So that's why I think the muzzle would be very important to walk them on a leash, because they are very much more aggressive on a leash, all dogs.
Well, they're very I mean, they want to run.
He likes to walk. He's like, he loves his 4-mile walks, and, yeah. So he's fine with that. So it was just, he was just putting, it wasn't his fault, it was the owner's fault that put him in a bad situation. And I'm very happy to keep him muzzled off the property, because I want him not to bite, and I don't want him to be put down.
Do you have something to add, sir?
Well, I hadn't seen the order, but when I saw the newspaper article, I was surprised, and I just wanted to convey to the board that our experience with Oliver as a neighbor is completely opposite of what we saw in the paper. And I just wanted to urge the board to consider the restraint rather than the destruction of the animal. In his own setting, he's never been any kind of a threat. I would never even conceive of him being a threat. We've been there with large groups, parties, birthday
Yeah.
parties, graduation parties. We've taken our granddaughter there for Halloween. If that's not a threatening night for a dog, what is? He's just
He's
not
on
a-
his own property, he's
Dressed
fine.
as Spider-Man that night.
Yeah. So he's been a great neighbor to have, so I think that I would really strongly urge the board to consider the restraint aspect or the restraint option over destruction.
Well, the board always takes the dog officer, animal control officer, I should say's recommendations, typically. I've never seen it not, so.
Well, I hadn't seen the recommendation, I just saw the
Oh, right, correct.
choice.
Anything from the board? Seeing nothing, there's a public hearing. Anybody from the audience wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, I'll take a motion.
Motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye, 5-0 in favor to close the public hearing. We have a motion to read?
Yeah, motion to declare Oliver, male Springer Spaniel owned by Peter and Mary Ann Prinos, 10 Alger Road, as dangerous, based on the definition of dangerous dog in Mass General Law 140, Section 136. And that when removed from the premises, the owner or the premises of the person keeping the dog, that Oliver shall be securely and humanely muzzled and restrained with a chain or other tethering device having a minimum tensile strength of 300 pounds and not exceeding 3 feet in length.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Sue.
We were moved out.
So that was done.
That's gone. Okay, we are actually now ahead of schedule. Is Mildred and Elizabeth here? Would you please come forward, please? Sit down. Get comfortable. I meant nothing by that pun.
It was actually pretty good. A little levity.
Oh, God. Sometimes we can't look the same. Hey, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Welcome to the board. I'd like you to introduce yourself for the record. If you could just name your name and your address, please.
Elizabeth Travers, 18 Glenwood Avenue in Foxborough.
Mildred Green, 1 Inman Lane.
Nice to meet you.
Mike.
Oh.
Yeah. We are relying on the cable for the minutes of the meeting tonight, so it's kind of very
Oh,
important.
okay.
so. And you can pull that down, do whatever you want. Okay. Would you like to introduce yourself? And we all got your information and tell us why you'd like to be on the Council of Aging. And it's pretty simple.
I guess I've been a Foxborough resident for my entire life. I'm a townie, and I've been active in the Council on Aging for many years. I have been volunteering in certain aspects and participating in a number of the trips they've had, which have been fantastic. I have been working with the plant sale, donating and working on plants, and doing the tea with Joanne Pratt, and I do video taping of the different programs that they have at the Council on Aging, the musical programs and educational, and bring these CD cards back to the Foxborough cable and download them to the computer so the rest of my group can put them in a DVD format and have them available for, the community to watch, and also to be aired on cable. I've been a driver for Fish for about 5 years, which provides transportation for local people to physical and doctor appointments for within an 11-mile radius. And I don't know, I love, I guess, volunteering, and I just thought this would be a nice step forward for me.
Well said. I appreciate it. Thank you for volunteering. Next.
I volunteer at the senior center and at the front desk once a week. I'm in the serenading seniors. I go on a lot of the trips and I'll do a lot of the functions there. I was on the trip committee. I think I'd be a nice advocate. I went to the 3 last board meetings just to see what it felt like to do that. And as I say, I know a lot of the seniors there, and I also volunteer for the Veterans Office here, too.
Thank you. Open it up to the board. Anybody have any questions for these young ladies?
I want to say thank you for, it's always tough when you have 2 for 1 position.
Exactly.
And it doesn't happen often.
No, it doesn't.
And we're good friends, too.
I know it.
Yes, yes.
I appreciate all you guys do, and I've seen you around, and I know you do great work. I appreciate that.
Ginny? Lorraine?
Just thank you both for coming forward, and it's going to be an interesting decision. Ideally, it would be nice if we had 2 spots to give both of you.
I know.
Maybe we can do one year and one the next year. But thank you for coming forward.
Okay.
This could be the most difficult decision we've had all
Tonight,
year.
yeah.
John?
It is a tough decision, and thanks a lot. And again, I've never seen 2 candidates appear in front of the Board of Selectmen to try to not compete, but in fact you are. But I was just wondering, is if you had to say, how am I different? How am I the best candidate? Is there anything that either one of you can say that differentiates yourself that would help us make up our minds?
I'm at the senior center a lot, and I know a lot of the people, good friends. I've made a lot of good friends there. Everybody likes me.
I mean, from a board position, you're actually in control of the budget and everything else, and you direct activities, you direct the mission of the Council on Aging. Is there anything that you could contribute to that thought?
Well, on the board, it's just like I think we're just sort of representing the seniors at the board. So, I feel I know the seniors a lot, and I could speak up for them. Not much else. I'm trying to keep my mind alert as I age.
I know. I've just been, as I say, busy with volunteering for many different aspects of the town of Foxborough, and would like to become a little bit more involved in the Council on Aging, because it's a great program. It's so great for the seniors in the town, and I don't know how I am different than Millie as far as having different input, but it's...
How do you both agree or disagree with the direction that it's going? Do you think you could add, is there anything negative that you disagree with that's going on at the Council of Aging that you would like to see changed?
I think unless you're a participant of the board, you really don't have an idea of the absolute function and what the role is. And so that's something you will find out once you get in and you become more involved. I know.
But they're open meetings to attend.
I guess I have not attended meetings because
I
I
don't
didn't realize they were
I don't know if
open.
they're as open as they used to be,
Yeah.
for some reason, I don't know.
How's that?
Very true.
I think if you have a problem or a situation, you have to present it the month before, and then come the next month with the whatever problem you have. They said I could come in and sit in if I wanted to, so I mean, it must be open to an extent, but I guess you couldn't present a problem unless you,
Right, so there's nothing you're aware of that you'd like to see changed, either one of you right now?
At the moment, no, not that we're aware of. Yeah.
No?
Anything else from the board? Jim?
Have either of you actually participated on a board, a governing board, or for any organization?
No. I
I've
haven't.
been on the board for the Friends of the Board and Library for the past 15 years, as treasurer for 12. And that's been a fantastic experience with, doing all of the fundraising and all of the other activities involved there.
So you're familiar with the functions of a board member? It's
Right.
It's not just showing up for coffee.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see a gentleman wants to speak from the audience on behalf of someone. Could you please come up to the mic next to our famous Frank Mortimer, the reporter? Name for the record, sir?
My name is Paul Gukin, and I'm a past member of the committee myself years ago with Chief. And it's a very hard decision what we're going to have to make. And it's too bad they couldn't both be on the committee, because I know both of them, and they both work very, very hard. And I work with Betty at Foxborough Cable, and she always gives 150%, and she's always helping other people. And it's just that I just feel that things have to be said at times, and it's not easy to say one's better than the other, because they both are terrific people. But working with Betty and seeing the things that she does for the town of Foxborough, I think she's a very credit to the town. And we just always like to say thank you very much for all your hard work, and the same with Millie. She works very hard at it too. But I'd just like to say what I think about that, being a past member of the committee. And thank you very much for listening to me.
You're welcome. Anybody else want to speak? Seeing none. Who wants to flip the coin?
That's exactly it.
Because you know what? I think that's about the only way to solve this situation, because I think they're both wonderful candidates. They're both very qualified, and they're both enthusiastic. And
There's if you remember, this was on the agenda
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago,
Yep.
and there was some confusion because one applicant was in, then there was a letter of recommendation from the Secretary of the Board of Council on Aging recommending one of them, and then there was some confusion, did they see the second application? So we sent it back to the Council on Aging, and I think I sent you guys an email that Vicky apologized for the confusion, and I think it was a little bit of our office, her office, but they submitted back the same letter that is dated in May recommending Millie. So I was expecting maybe an updated letter, but I think their recommendation stands that this board has recommended, I'm sorry, the Council on Aging is making the recommendation of Millie. Could I be reading that wrong?
I don't have that letter to read. I'm sure it's in the pack, but I'm not looking at it right now.
Jim, was that at the point where there was only one candidate?
It was,
Yes.
but then they reconsidered when we sent it back to them, saying there's actually two candidates. And they came back and they sent the same package with the second applicant on it. And I think my read of that is they're recommending Millie. I'm just saying that because I don't want to slight another board if they're sending a recommendation for consideration. That's the way I'm reading this.
So is that in our packet?
It is. It just says, Selectmen and Selectwoman, please be advised that Jean Bonneau has submitted a letter of resignation to the Council on Aging. and Human Services Board of Foxborough as of April 2013. The board would like to appoint Mildred Millie Green, 1 Inman Lane, Foxborough, to fill the position. Millie partakes in senior center activities throughout the week and volunteers on a weekly basis, and this is signed by Ann Alabrandi, who's the secretary of their board.
Anything else to add?
I just wanted to make mention, I think it's, I appreciate that recommendation. I think it's the experience that Elizabeth has as a board member, I think would be helpful to the Council on Aging. And I know Millie would be great also on it. I'm just thinking where there's only one spot, maybe to bring someone with experience on would be something to consider. Even though, this, I think this recommendation, I guess I would have liked to have seen a follow-up, or a vote, was there a vote by the board, or is this strictly a letter from the secretary coming to us, or?
You can see, I don't think they can actually vote.
Well, she says on it, the board would like to have appointed.
The board.
She's the secretary.
Okay.
And again, I'm not familiar with the candidates other than seeing you around, and I'm certainly not familiar with the board. This is all I have in the packet.
So were you both interviewed by the board as
No.
part of this process?
No.
No?
Not really interviewed. I've gone to the meetings, and they knew, that I was interested.
Okay.
Okay. Ginny?
Well, having been on many boards, I find it's always helpful when you do appoint someone to a board, someone who has experience on a board working with other people. And I just tend to think that someone with a little more experience working on a board would be more, an asset to the committee.
Thank you. John?
No additional comments, and again, this is a tough call, but procedurally, how do we do this? Is it just a show of hands?
Well, if
for
you
one
guys make
candidate
me the
versus another?
swing vote, and they'll flip a coin.
But
I'll make that public statement right now.
Yeah, but I think we ought to take a vote. Those who are in favor of is it Betty?
Elizabeth,
Elizabeth
Betty.
and Millie.
alias.
Can we do
My
that?
godmother's name was Millie, so I'm
90% of my family's Elizabeth. So, yeah.
Oh, I need a motion, ladies and gentlemen. I think the discussion is over.
All right, I'll try to do this. Give me. I'll put everything in the affirmative. Okay, so I'm gonna have. I move that we appoint, and I'll say Mildred Green, and then we can either say those in favor. Can we do that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You need a second.
It works.
Okay, I move that we appoint Mildred Green to the vacant position on the Council of Aging, effective immediately.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? One.
Again, I had to hang my hat on the folder.
Okay.
Now, do I read
You
another
go
motion?
for the
Okay.
second.
I move that we appoint Elizabeth Travers to the vacant position on the Council of Aging Board, effective immediately.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? I guess that's the way it's gonna be. Sorry,
That's okay.
I think it's
We'll be working together.
yeah. I hope that's what you will do, is
We
work
will.
together, and I look forward to seeing you again. when the
Okay, you'll
next
see me
vacancy
around.
Next
comes.
appointment.
And
3 years? No, I don't
really
think so.
appreciate you coming forward. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
Right, thank you.
I think just so the record's clear, and since our secretary's not here, that it was a unanimous vote by the board of
Yes,
Selectmen.
thank you, Jim. Yes. Okay, now it's being, we gotta wait to 7:40. Is that a public hearing? No.
No. this
Mr.
is-
Lovely, are you ready to go?
Of course I am, Mr.
Well, last week you were, jumped everybody and cut the line. This week we're on time, so. Did I say that? No.
that to me before.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You know, Jeff, we got a few minutes ahead of schedule.
Oh, sure.
If you could just, no, sit down, please. If you could just comment on the function that the library had last week and mention some of the people involved. It was a really well-run event.
I'd be happy to do that.
All the caterers, outstanding effort. We all enjoyed it, 4 out of 5, I believe. I know John was out of town.
You would have enjoyed it.
It was in San Francisco, and I enjoyed San Francisco immensely.
It was
pretty good, too.
fantastic, and I just leave it to you. From
Absolutely. So we had a very successful private fundraising campaign as part of the library effort, and we held a donor thank you event last Thursday at the library. And we had a local caterer, actually a guy named Dave Lancey, who lives, I think, in Foxborough, is a principal in the catering firm called Nextine, which did a great job, great food. Another Foxborough guy helped us with the wine that we served. His name's John Gill. He works for the Martinetti Companies. And the purpose of the event was to thank all of the donors and to allow people to get a little bit of a sneak preview of the library. So many people worked hard on it. We had Janet Pino and Kevin Penders and Jerry Cirillo over vacuuming literally all day Thursday. It was a little bit like one of those HGTV shows trying to pull it all together. But they did. I thought the library looked pretty good. The book guys were in there loading the stacks right up till the very last second. So it was a great success. I can't thank Jerry Cirillo. Our architects did a great job. You know, I've been living with this project for years, but we're really tickled with how it came out. Janet Pino and Jerry Cirillo and Margie Rossetti worked with the architects on the design stuff. So a lot of the things that you all saw Thursday night, I was seeing for the first time, because I wasn't involved in the design phase. So we were delighted with it. I think it went well, and you know, there will be a public rededication sometime in the fall, and we will try to carefully generate a comprehensive thank you list. We thanked some of the donors Thursday night, but of course our biggest thanks go to the people of the town of Foxborough who came up with the money and financial support. The Board of Library Commissioners, who included us in their grant round, and then of course our private donors and library money. So it was I think we're at the good part of this project. We've done some of the hard part, and now it's time to start to enjoy it.
And the band?
The band, the Geo Trio with George Murphy from Foxborough, did a great job. Really enjoyed them. It was a good event.
I just have to say, the children's library took my breath away when I went up there. It's just the most beautiful setting. It just left me speechless. It
I think
was
we
really great.
We have some lucky kids, and it took my breath away too. I can't say how delighted I am.
You can tell. And it doesn't go. That's why I wanted to make a statement. I was going to say exactly that at the chairman's update, but I wanted to wait for you. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
But no, fantastic. And now we'll move on to the variance that you proposed. I think this is about the 15th time we've talked about this variance at this table.
Well, this is, I think I'm getting older, because essentially this is, while we were permitting this, well, I'll start at the beginning. The library, the land the library is on, came into the town in the 1960s in 2 separate parcels. One is really sort of the front piece where the old library was, and the other is that piece that extends down Baker Street. The front piece, I think, came into the town in 1963 from a Frederick Potter. In the late 60s, Mr. Potter deeded the second piece to the Friends of the Library, who in turn deeded it to the town. Essentially, and Spike Smith, who's the owner of 8 Baker Street, is here. Historically, Mr. Potter, in his deed to the town, he reserved an easement across the library property to gain access to the rear yard of 8 Baker Street, which is kind of built lot line to lot line. Without the library, they can't get access to their backyard. That easement technically expired when Mr. Potter was no longer occupying the property, which occurred sometime years ago. At all times since then, the library was honoring the easement and there was always a gate there, and I think it worked pretty well with the Smiths. During the permitting process, which was actually fairly contentious, I don't know if you recall, but the library agreed, and the planning board put it as a condition of their site plan approval that we seek an easement from town meeting, and in December 2011, town meeting voted to authorize your board to grant the easement if you so choose. Now we are wrapping up. We have a temporary certificate of occupancy. The hope is to get a final certificate of occupancy in the next month or so. And this is a condition of the site plan approval. Rather than draft the easement myself, I asked Dick Gellerman's office, attorney Cindy Amara, to draft the easement for us. And Bay Colony Group, which is the engineer on the project, drafted an easement sketch plan. So the request before your board is to approve the granting of an easement, which is a 10-foot wide access easement that runs through the parking lot of the Boyden Library and runs to a gate on the Smith property, or actually on the border of the Smith property, that grants the Smith family and future owners of that property access to that backyard. So Bay Colony did the plan, Cindy Amara did the easement, and we were, after drafting the easement, we took a close look at it, and we have made an amendment to clarify. As you look at your copy of the easement plan, you'll see that there are a couple of parking spaces that are impacted. So we revised the easement slightly by reserving the right to park in those parking spots for the library and its guests. So I do have slightly revised language, and we simply added language to the reserved rights that add that we have the right to park within and permit parking within the designated parking spaces shown on Exhibit A. So it's always worked well in the past. If there came a time when the Smiths needed to access the property, they could come into the library if somebody was impeding their access. I think it's unlikely that it's really going to happen. There's little parking there on, evenings, some parking on Saturday, none on Sunday. So that's, and I do apologize. So even though we already had the town meeting vote from 211, I asked Attorney Amara to put it back on the warrant again because I simply forgot that we had it.
This is like Groundhog Day, right?
I know. And I'm not saying it won't happen again.
All right. Any questions from the board? Jimmy, this is your
No, well, I
day.
did go out Sunday and looked at the gate and the access, and I've been going back and forth with Jeff. It is unusual to grant a private party a public easement on public property, but if there's any case that is justified, I've got no reservations with this at all. It did a nice job.
Okay, anybody else? Entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Sir, you need to come to the mic. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter. I'll get in trouble. I just need name and address for the record and...
Frank. I own the property at 6 and 8 Baker Street. Mr. Lovely and I have had a few heated discussions over the years over that.
And your name, once again, for the record, sir.
Well, it depends. It's either K. Gerald Smith or, as I'm known around town, Spike Smith. My address is 3587 Grand Cypress Drive, Naples, Florida. I happen to be in town for this 3 weeks. My daughters live in the house. I have no problems, but the thing that worries me is that property, we have paid taxes the 30 years that I've owned it, and we're the third owner since 1860. And Garrett Splain, who was our attorney way back when, he said that the Potters had been paying taxes in that corner forever, so the town really had no right of way. And we just said, no, let's leave it the way it is. And I really hope that it will just be, it will not bother us only in the fall when we take leaves out of the backyard and there's nobody around the library in the fall. But I just want to make sure you realize that for House was built in 1860. We're the third owners. And we've paid taxes a long time for a, how big is it? 10 by 12?
Your backyard?
No, the ramp for the fences.
Well, it's probably 10 feet wide and
Yeah.
14 feet
So
long.
you owe me. So to vote this in, take his amendments out, just give it to me. Thank you.
I think you're in the wrong department. I think you have to go down to the tax assessors.
Is that the chaplain?
Okay, any more discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
Okay. I move that we approve the execution of an easement regarding the Boyden Library as submitted by the Boyden Library trustees.
Second?
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye, it's 5-0. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. We'll see you at town meeting again.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. This is the execution copy.
Thank you.
I don't know what your practice is.
You're not gonna put on a big show, are you? A town meeting, you're just gonna,
I think I'm done.
okay.
We'll get this to you, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're ready for action, am I right? Yes, let's go to action, and I'll turn it over to the clerk. He's really good at this. Okay, you get to talk for a few minutes.
What do you want to do? Where are we?
Well, interface. Anybody have any problems in interface? There was one.
Oh, the,
Inter-office, you mean?
Inter-office, yes, sorry, Jimmy, it's been a long day. It's 103 degrees.
That was a
here.
new company coming in,
Yeah,
Interface.
Oh, yeah.
June 11th minutes?
Yes.
page 2.
There was,
Just on page 2.
Miss Walsh is no longer on the Board of
Right,
Selectmen.
and-
I beat Lorraine to that one publicly, just so everybody knows. She'll,
Nice.
All right, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of June 11th as written.
Oh,
As corrected?
gotta be A.
As corrected, sorry.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next we have Ellen
Caggiano.
Caggiano and Mintz Levin, billboard applicants for Foxborough Realty Associates LLC for a freestanding general advertising billboard to be located on Route 1. I will start by saying, I don't know why this is an action item.
I requested that this be put on here. This came to my attention a couple of weeks ago and just raised a lot of questions. And so I saw it was scheduled for the planning board meeting the week before, so I attended that meeting. And they discussed this application. The reason it caught my attention is because, as you know, I have always had an interest in the sign situation up on Route 1 and water and sewer's involvement in that. But when this came up, I was surprised by it, number one. So going to the planning board, they explained the concerns that they had, and I thought it was important that if we could have a discussion to see if we would support. They have submitted a letter to the Zoning Board of Appeals and Water and Sewer. Mike read into the record earlier their letter to the Zoning Board of Appeals that we should support the concerns raised by planning and water and sewer. Basically, the sign bylaws as part of the master planning process, those will all be redone when the time is right. And what this request does is potentially bypass that change in, that process. So what I was hoping is that we could support the comments provided and request that the Zoning Board of Appeals not permit this this variance at this time until there's an opportunity for the town to work through in an organized fashion the approach for zoning for signs, determine do we even want electronic signs? I mean, electronic signs were voted down at one of our past town meetings, if I'm remembering correctly. Do you remember that?
Yes, it was.
So,
Last
you know, I think it's just something that needs more work, and that I think this application is premature, so I just wanted us to go on record if the board would consider that to support the delay in any type of implementation of this.
Just a point of clarification, when something's on the action item list versus the agenda, is that for information purposes only, or is
No.
that open for discussion?
It's open for discussion to, I'm asking for a letter.
You know what? Why don't we put this on, you want to put this on the agenda, Lorraine, for the next meeting? Or how does the board feel? Because it could be a lengthy discussion.
The zoning board of appeal meeting is when?
On the 27th?
Of this month.
Okay, Randy's saying that the zoning board of appeals is meeting in 2 days?
2 days, right?
Okay, and it's on their agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this application, it's here because action items, but just to discuss it.
Yeah.
But it's not being presented to us.
No.
And it's
For
not up
approval.
for our approval.
Right.
It's
No.
it's strictly to the zoning board.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And typically, this would be informational, but then we couldn't vote on it, I think is what Lorraine's saying, correct?
Yep.
I know Lorraine's been working hard on this, as well as Ginny, attending the meetings and everything else, and I would tend to take her input on this, because, you know, we all rely on each other to go and do certain groundwork, and when she comes back to the board and she says this is what she wants, I'm in the mind to appease her.
You don't have to do that. You just.
But I know, Jimmy, there's something you want to bring up on this subject from earlier statements? Or
Well,
do you wanna-
it was a little concerning that another board member and a past selectman was saying I have a conflict. I haven't seen this application other than it's in my packet. And I don't know much about it other than the meeting that I had with you and Gellerman, Attorney Gellerman and Pecos, where they said they had an idea and they were going to bring it forward. But other than that, I'm not involved in this.
Right.
So it's a little concerning and sobering to hear this at the table under citizens' input.
Right.
So to be honest with you, I know of this from a brief discussion I had.
It was a 5-minute discussion.
And I've learned more about this in the last 2 days from business owners and fellow selectmen, so it's kind of caught me a little bit by surprise.
Right.
So it's always a little eye-opening when there's accusations made
Right.
at the beginning of a meeting under public session in front of a microphone
Yeah.
without any follow-up, so.
Yeah, it
But
just,
it's happened before, so I'll leave it at that.
yeah, and I'll concur with what you said. We were in a meeting, and we had many things on the agenda, and this was 2 or 3 minute, by the way, on the way out the door.
Yeah, with no plans given,
No
no
nothing,
plans
no
kept.
information given, no nothing. And that's all there is to talk about on that subject. So any other further discussion?
One question, Mike. Lorraine, from your perspective, what action are you looking for the board to take? Or are you looking for us to send a message to the zoning board of appeals?
The action is that I'd like
to
us.
review this in a particular way?
I'd like us to draft a letter that supports the position that the planning board and the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners are taking in terms of requesting a delay by the zoning board.
Until the mass regs are out and the master plan is
Until the
finished.
master plan and the actual approach for sign zoning can be developed.
Okay, to consider this in sequence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Maybe it sounds a little ignorant at this point, but would a presentation to the selectmen be appropriate for this application, or this has nothing to do with the selectmen?
It's not even on our table. It's one of those things, it's either we support the ZBA and whatever their finding is. I mean, the ZBA deals with hardships. I don't see where this is a hardship. It doesn't even quantify. I mean, it's,
Well, they deal with variances, and variances are because of hardships.
Well, abnormal
But-
situations.
you know, so I mean.
We don't even allow.
So is this
At this
for a
point, how
variance?
can you do a variance for something
variance.
that's not even allowed in town?
There's a lot of moving
Yeah.
parts to this. It's absolutely, to me, it's not even our purview at this point in time.
Why did the zoning board put it on
The-
their agenda? Obviously, they
Because
intend.
they have an applicant.
Applicant.
So they
This
have
is
to
a
put it on
formal
their agenda.
application
They
to
have
the
an
zoning
applicant.
board.
Board of
Right.
Appeals.
All right.
Yeah.
And they're looking to move forward with this. And
Yeah. I'm not speaking about any arrangements or deals that have been made in terms of signed revenue. I'm speaking about the application for an electronic billboard right now by the craft organization, looking at what that potentially does in terms of, shutting out the town and potentially other business owners if that variance is granted, is, I think, something that I would like to see us support the other boards that are more closely involved in it, really.
Mike, something to say for the record, please?
Yeah, Mike Saig, 8 Kendall Drive. Since I happen to be sitting here, and in the spirit of full disclosure, I applied yesterday for an additional sign. I think the difference between the applicant here and me is that there's 2 different zones here. I happen to be in the economic development zone where these signs have been allowed to date. S1, they haven't been, okay? And I just couldn't sit there and not say anything. And that's really all I have
Well, I
to say.
appreciate that, because it does give clarification. That's why they're going for a variance, Mike?
Well, I think the way the town sign bylaws, you have to go for a variance anyways.
Okay.
But none of those billboard signs have been allowed in the past in the S1 zone. They have been allowed in the economic development zone.
Okay.
Craft organization has 4 or 5 of them, and then the town and the craft organization share 2 boards. Okay? And one of the issues, and the town has approached me several times because some of my trees block the most southerly sign. And, I've been talking to Mr. Pecos for the last year and a half trying to get this on a warrant, and he just kept pushing it off for whatever reason. But I did apply Monday, and it will be on not this week's meeting, but the next month's meeting.
That'd be planning board?
No, ZBA.
ZBA.
So the warrant to allow the electronic bill, when you said you...
Yes, yes. No, it's not a warrant. I'm going for a variance as well. Okay? See, the difference, Mark, is it doesn't go to the planning board because it's not a zoning bylaw.
With
it's
you?
No, for the whole town. It's a general bylaw.
Okay.
And that's why it goes to ZBA and not planning board.
Okay. Thank you for your input.
Okay.
Appreciate it. All right, so
it sounds like there's one business owner that wants to do something that's going to preclude others from doing the same thing. They got in the door first. We've got another one that just is coming in. And from what I understand, over the weekend, the water and sewer are trying to do their own deal with water tanks, which this may eliminate their ability since there's this 1,000-foot radius around the sign. So it's kind of like who comes in first, and is that the way that the town wants to do it? Or do we want to bring it out to a process where everyone understands each other on Route 1, and maybe there's a mutual benefit and some understanding and maybe some master planning for once on that area?
okay.
Yeah.
Ginny?
I mean, I think that's where the planning board was going. And I mean, I was familiar with the arguments that the planning board was making. Sharon Wasson wrote a very thorough, comprehensive letter about the planning board's stand. But also, I've been attending the water and sewer meetings, and they also have an issue in regard to this board. And I just think, I agree with Lorraine. I think it would be good. I would support a letter of support from the Selectmen, supporting the planning board, supporting the water and sewer, just to give the zoning board of appeal a sense of the feelings of the other boards in town. So that's why I would support a letter.
And that's what you have intended here, right?
Yes.
Letter to support water and sewer?
Yes.
And
Planning board.
John?
This process seems a little bit unusual in that it seems like it's circumventing normal channels. It's probably perfectly legitimate. But I think this would also, if it was to pass and if an electronic billboard was to be built on Route 1, it would begin to change the look and feel of the town, and I think it would open a precedent. And I know that we had a very lengthy and healthy debate on this 16, 18 months ago, and it turned out the town was against this concept. So I think a broader discussion is necessary. I think a letter to the zoning board from the Board of Selectmen stating our opinion to, involve other boards and get more input, I think is probably the best move at this point.
Lorraine, you okay with that?
Yep.
I'll make a
I'll,
motion.
Yeah.
Who will draft the letter?
How about you and Lorraine get together?
Yeah, we
and
can draft it,
a
yeah.
letter, and we'll put it on the next action.
All right, I'll make a
Okay.
Well,
motion.
don't you want it before?
It has to go for this Thursday, is the
Meeting
ZBA.
is 27th.
Okay,
We
I
can
can,
work with
I can
Bob.
draft it tomorrow.
We can work with Bob Cutler.
okay. Well, I think they're watching, so they kind of know what we're talking about. I mean, typically they do.
But the letter is a formality.
Yes.
Which I think is still the right path to take. But I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen agree to draft a letter summarizing this discussion, that we support the input from the planning board and other boards to consider the town master plan and to consider other established zoning bylaws before considering this petition on the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah.
Seconded by?
I'll second it.
By James. Good discussion. All those in favor? 5-0, Rickard. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, and we'll be back. I hate to do it to you at this point in time, because we got to get through the action, but I need to take a 5-minute recess, okay? Thank you. Thank you, Frank.
All ready?
Okay, thanks for your patience. We're back, and John, could you start again with number 3, please?
Okay, number 3 on our action item list is first and goal, a request for 8 one-day all-alcohol licenses for Patriots home games days of the 2013 season.
It's an annual request. Take a motion from the board. Everything
Motion
looks in order?
to approve the 8 one-day all liquor license applications for the home games for 2013 on the Fred Smurls application.
Is there-
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? 5-0 on that
Actually,
vote?
if you want, I can just make the motion straight from this.
Absolutely.
Save some time, okay. As far as appointments, I move that the Board of Selectmen appoint Deborah Spinelli to the Audit Committee for a 3-year term expiring on July 1st, 2016.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0 again?
Continuing with appointments, I move that the Board of Selectmen appoint Robert Worthley to the Canoe River Aquifer Advisory Committee to a 3-year term expiring on July 1st, 2016.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye, 5-0 again?
An applicant, a reapplication for a taxi cab license. I move that we approve a taxi cab license for Tony Saliba, expiring on December 31st, 2013.
Second.
By Lorraine? I should be saying, all those motions prior were seconded by Lorraine. Am I correct? Just so that, for the record, it is on tape. Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0 again?
I move that we approve a taxi cab license expiring on December 31st, 2013, issued to the new owners of Foxborough Town Taxi. The petitioner is Veterans Taxi of Newton, doing business as Foxborough Town Taxi.
Second.
Second by Lorraine. Any more discussion? All those in favor? 5-0 again?
I move that we accept a donation of $300 from the Foxborough Founders Day Planning Committee to the Animal Control Gift Fund with thanks and gratitude.
Second.
Second by Lorraine. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0 again?
I move that we accept a donation of $400 from the Sharon Credit Union to the Recreation Gift Fund, again with thanks and gratitude.
Second.
Second by Lorraine. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0 again?
What do you want to do with that?
We'll take it up. There's a request under number 9 from Michael Davison, Racing Review Committee, request for the Board of Selectmen to request acknowledgement from Plainville of Foxborough status as a surrounding community. Does the board want to discuss that?
I think what this letter is, under the Mass Gaming Commission bylaws, if we think we are an abutting community, impacted abutting community,
Right.
then the first step is we have to notify the applicant that we consider ourselves an abutting impacted community. What we did back in April, maybe, We sent a letter over to Joe Fernandez, the town administrator, and the Mass Gaming Commission saying we believe we are an impacted community. What this letter said is they've done their studies, they've reviewed the Plainville studies and their consultant studies, and the committee that we put together says they believe we are an impacted community. So what we need to do is send a letter over to the applicant per Mass Gaming regulations that say we believe based on this that we're an impacted community. So they're asking us to send a letter.
You want to make that motion, Jim?
All right, I'll make a motion based on the letter from the Foxborough Racino Committee for the Selectmen to draft a letter to the applicant of the Plain Ridge Slot House, stating our position that we are an impacted abutting community.
Second?
I'll second that.
Any
Should we-
discussion?
Yeah, should we include this letter with our own letter?
Is that who's that letter from, Jim?
From the Racino Committee?
I think this is a letter that gives credibility in stating their reasons why
Backing our request.
we're impacted. And it doesn't give a dollar figure, it doesn't give one reason, traffic.
But I think
other
we
stuff.
could write a letter from the Board of Selectmen referencing this letter and having it as an attachment.
As an attachment.
Attachment, yeah.
Right, and that, we'll have the town manager do that, or you want to do it as the clerk? I mean, it's, the town manager usually takes care of that.
Actually, given that Bob's up to his eyeballs, I'll call him tomorrow and I can draft something.
I'd appreciate that. Okay.
That's 2 letters I have to write to him.
And that's something that Mark can sign as chairman, not the whole board.
If you give me authority to, I would believe that's correct.
Yeah, we've done that before.
Okay, so we have one person like to
Can you
speak?
just make sure that we get a copy of whatever letter you send?
Yes, Janet.
Because that way, nothing will get lost.
As long as you say your name for the record.
Janet Sullivan Kennedy.
Thank you.
So
Part of the Racino Committee.
CC it back to Mike Davis.
Yeah, because that way at
First
least
and amongst.
we will have a copy and nothing will get lost. Do you also have a copy of that first letter you sent? To,
It was in one of our earlier packets.
Yeah.
We should attach that as well.
yeah, if you could send that to him too, that way at least there's a
Good-
paper
good
trail.
point.
Yeah.
That would be, it should be in the files in the office.
Yeah, because that way
What's the
nothing
date
will
of
get
that letter,
lost.
roughly? Was that March?
That was a while ago.
April?
Maybe it was a couple of months ago or something.
I know Mike has it, but I'll
Around
get
April.
it to you.
First
Okay,
around.
we'll get it all together.
All right, yeah, as long as that way there's a paper trail and nothing will get lost.
Okay, great. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. And that was seconded by John, motion by James. Okay.
Okay, Article 10 is supposed to be an update on the Foxborough Common fence from Roger Hill. And
No Roger
seeing
Hill.
no Roger, we'll continue this until the 9th.
Yep. We'll have,
Ask Roger to come back.
At least if we can get a letter from Roger and let us know what the status is and what the quotes are. Because I've not seen
I thought
any.
that's what was in the
this
packet.
is.
It was a
Oh,
letter
okay,
from
they're-
Roger
they're
saying
there.
he's done his research, these are the costs for fabricating the mold, doing the whole 9 yards.
I thought he was gonna pick one though. But, well, I'll call Roger.
Yeah.
I will call.
I thought he was going to give us we've decided to go this route.
Yeah, I thought he was gonna make a decision.
Yeah, because I know he was checking with
The funding.
Foundries the last time we talked with him.
And the funding was the other.
Yeah, I think his letter, and actually I gave it to Jack was looking at it, so I don't have it in my folder. I took it out to copy it. But I think the letter said, based on our direction, he's done his research, he's found a foundry to make the form, manufacture the rails, this is the cost. There's nothing in the budget for 2013 or 14. Here's my report. So I think it's, basically, do we accept it, and then can we fund it somehow? But again, it's not happening tonight since
Okay.
Roger's not here.
Yeah, I'd rather talk with Roger and have him come in, and we'll make it on an earlier night for him. Okay, so we'll shelf that to the next meeting.
Yeah, and the last item is from the town manager. It's the renewal of commercial parking lot licenses. It's a 1-year term expiring on July 1st, 2014.
And that was a discussion we're having tonight, and Chief O'Leary has no problem
No,
with us permitting those?
Would go ahead and, vote in the licenses so they can be issued, and we'll have further discussions about the regulations that will operate under
Okay, I'll take a motion on that.
Okay, I move that the Board of Selectmen renew the commercial parking lot licenses to a 1-year term expiring on July 1st, 2014.
Second.
Second by Lorraine. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, that it?
That's it.
Okay, I'll, at this point in time, we're going to go into executive session to discuss, once I find it, anybody want to hand me theirs?
Yeah.
Going into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiation with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining session or contract negotiation with non-union personnel. Deputy Police Chief John Chandler, Town Manager Kevin Pecos, and 2, collective bargaining for Public Employment Committee, PEC.
So moved.
Any discussion? Roll call? Jim?
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
I said Ginny.
Yes, yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Yes.
Mark says yes.
Did you say that we were going to exit?
I did not.
And exit into public session for
So-
unfinished business and
I think we might be coming back into public session briefly to make a statement, very briefly. We're going to handle that first, and we will be back in, I would say, 5 minutes. Is that something? Or you think it's going to be longer?
I don't think you'll be, no, it won't be longer.
Just to make a quick public statement, we're going to handle that
think
first. Okay, so of the media, and Frank, if you want to stick around, give us 5 minutes. I promise you it won't be more than that.
I'm not gonna shut up, I'm just gonna put on pause.
We're going to go in Kevin's office real quick, because I don't want you to shut that off, because Mike Weber will just never talk to me again. So
Mr. Chairman, you're thinking which session is gonna be 5 minutes long, or
we're going to discuss, well, we'll discuss it in executive section, but I think we're going to come out,
when you come out after the 3 items? It'll be
no, we're going to come out rather quickly on the one item, just to release a statement.
I don't really know.
Well, that would be my plan. If not, I will then tell the media to go away. But I think that's what I have in mind. So we're going to come back into open session in 5 minutes. Okay? So if everybody could please leave the room. Okay, thank you. Welcome back to the Board of Selectmen meeting. And I'm going to ask Jimmy DeVellis to weigh in on.
yeah, just finishing up some of the discussions. We did go into executive session to discuss our town manager, and based on those discussions regarding Kevin Pecos, which we can't disclose because that's under the executive session privileges. We come out of that executive session, we need to make a decision on a temporary basis to appoint an interim town manager to replace Kevin while some issues are going on under executive session. So a suggestion could be made that Kevin had appointed Bob Cutler, our town clerk, for an interim while he was on military leave for a couple weeks. That is something that we can consider. Bob, I think, has done a good job during the 2 or so weeks that he was here, acting as town manager, and until we can figure out the process moving forward, we should appoint somebody such as Bob as an acting town manager.
Anything else? Any discussion? Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion. Try this time. I move to appoint Robert Cutler, current town clerk, as acting town manager, effective immediately until further action by the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That's 5-0. Okay, and now we will go back into executive session to discuss, conduct strategy session in preparation for negotiation with non-union personnel, or conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Deputy Police Chief John Chandler, Town Manager Kevin Pecos, and 2, collective bargaining for Public Employee Committee. And then we will solely come to open session to adjourn. Roll call vote?
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Could we get this gentleman's name?